across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, all just gone 4. Thank you to Ian Collins. Back tomorrow, of course, the housewife's choice between 1 and 4. But it's JK on Drive, on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. And we are here until 7 o'clock. Now, my first guest today is a very, very important person who is a very, very busy lady. So rather than me give you the usual, this is what's in the news, I'm going straight to her because she's a busy person. Poppy Coburn, assistant comment editor of The Telegraph. Good afternoon. Have you got to go at 4:15 or something? Woman, what's going on now?
Someone's going to be banging on this door otherwise, Jeremy. So it's very important. High stakes.
High stakes. Did a show once on ITV called High Stakes. Only made 6 of them. It was crap. Welcome to the show. How are you? How's the wonderful world of The Telegraph? I love the stories increasingly that come out on The Telegraph, and there is one today. I'm going to start with it because it's just completely brilliant, and you'll be able to comment on it. Campaigners have accused the St John's Ambulance Service of erasing women. This was in The Telegraph after they issued official CPR guidance referring to women as people with breasts. Poppy Coburn. I don't want to upset anybody. I mean, I know plenty of men who have breasts, moobs. What would they be identified as by the St John's Ambulance? Brilliant.
Sometimes it feels like reality is being edited by the Daily Star, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of describing women as people with breasts is just like... I mean, imagine telling some feminist in the 1980s that would what we'd end up as. You know, they think they'd lost the war.
I mean, honestly, it is getting to the point, and I find myself saying it almost every single day, that somebody is trying to make a point or somebody is trying to tick a box in the reality of life. You know, men, women. I still get the chills when I remember Donald Trump's inauguration speech, and he said it will from now on be the policy of this American administration that there are 2 genders, men and women. You can hear them recoiling in horror somewhere in Radioland. Oh, my God, what do you mean? It's true.
But isn't it so awful that it has to take someone like the President of the United States to say stuff like that? I mean, you almost expect him to say, by the way, everyone, the sky is blue and grass is green. But, you know, it's not the only instance of the NHS doing something like this. I actually know someone in my family, middle-aged man, went to the hospital to get a check-up, getting a mole check, and he was asked if he might be pregnant. And
asked if he was pregnant? Getting a mole checked? A bloke?
It's one of those routine medical checks. And I know the Christmas period was difficult, so he put on a little bit of weight. But the idea that this man, a middle-aged man, could be pregnant is so ridiculous. And the nurse looked embarrassed to ask it because it's so ludicrous. But this is the guidance they're given. You have to ask everyone, even someone with a beard, if they are pregnant.
See, now we're into... Because a bloke with a beard, you see, it's totally different in my world. That means something completely different. I've got a story as well. I think I've probably told it on the show 100 times because apparently that's what happens when dementia sets in. But a midwife who worked, I think, for 20 years, and there was new guidance, and she was so appalled she didn't do it. You're supposed to... I mean, she got reported by a couple for saying, congratulations, you've got a beautiful baby boy, and they went nuts and wrote to her bosses who said, you can't decide on the gender of the child. That's very unfair. You must have that, you know, written down against your work, you know, by your records. You shouldn't identify. People have to do that for themselves. It's a boy or a girl. What's wrong with you?
Also, what's up with this couple? It's like having the Stasi. Why are you reporting the woman who has just helped you deliver your baby, the most traumatic medical procedure, bearing a heart transplant you can go through, you know, to then say, oh, she's been so offensive because she's looked at our newborn baby's genitalia and just accurately reported what they are.
Completely agree.
Congratulations, your baby identifies as a boy. I mean, how would you know? They're just yelling.
I know. Congratulations, your baby identifies as a baby. It hasn't got breasts, so we're not giving it CPR. It's fine. That's the wonderful story in The Telegraph. And by the way, for anybody watching and listening, they do some amazing stories now on a daily basis in The Telegraph. You should check it out. I wanted your take, please, on sort of a story that's been sort of doing the rounds for the last 4 or 5 days, this bust-up between Nigel Farage and Reform MP Rupert Lowe. We've sort of had a standoff. Reform not commenting. They've gone very quiet. I guess damned if you do, damned if you don't. Rupert Lowe, interestingly, has had a police investigation launched against him on the same day that all 7 people that work for him in the House of Commons. This is a man who's been accused by Reform of being, you know, out of touch and sexist and almost being called a bully. All 7 said jointly in a statement he's one of the nicest, most down-to-earth, normal, real and genuine people that we've ever worked with, which begs the question, and I've heard lots of people, I have to say, ask him this, but where do you think this puts Reform? Where does it put Nigel Farage? Where does it put the whole bandwagon that was really steamrollering everybody else?
I know. And the whole point of Reform was supposed to be where this populist start-up party that isn't like the rest of these rotters in Westminster, and to then do something like essentially knifing one of your MPs in the back. Now, obviously, this investigation is going on, but the timing is certainly convenient. You know, I think it's pretty difficult for anyone from Reform to actually defend this on the basis of just going, oh, we're waiting for the outcome of the investigation. Where have I heard that before? The Tories. Heard that for 14 years from the Tories.
Absolutely.
But I think also it's based on a problem that comes from what does Farage want from his party? Does he want a professionalised Reform that is going to take the mantle of the centre-right, basically become the Tory party but without the baggage? Or does he recognise that politics in this country is changing? People are fed up with the way that people have been doing things. They don't think it works. They don't want infighting. They don't want scheming. They don't want briefing against each other in the media. They want people who can put their heads together and do what needs to be done to fix the country. And I think fundamentally, this is something he's forgetting. In trying to professionalise Reform, you may end up losing the reason people are supporting you in the first place.
I think that the point,
because they don't like the existing order.
Yeah, I get that. I sort of have a degree of sympathy, but I'm not, you know, I'm very much on the fence because I think Rupert Lowe's a good guy. I also know that Rupert Lowe doesn't need to do this job, has plenty of money, and it is absolutely in his mind about public service, isn't taking a salary. I was quite interested with Farage's approach to the whole debate. Tommy Robinson, the debate about Tommy Robinson, because we know, do we not, that many people who supported Farage and Reform were very angry when he said, I don't want Tommy Robinson in Reform. Many people contacted this show, this station, and said, that's a mistake. At the time, I thought to myself, is this Farage, trying to get the phrase right, but doing the dirty work that one needs to do to be credible, right? So I look at what's going on with him and Lowe. Is this ego? This seems to have emanated since Elon Musk said Rupert Lowe's a good guy and Farage, you know, needs to go. They need another leader. Did that create that sort of problem, or has Nigel Farage had to pull the reins in a bit and play the game that one has to, I suspect, right? Because we're not America, unfortunately. Because wouldn't it be great if we could have somebody like Trump who didn't give a toss about anything legally or whatever, just said what he felt and did it? Is Farage, in trying to make it, if you like, a little bit more understandable, a little bit more acceptable for the parts of the establishment you need to win over, has that alienated people like Lowe, who don't want to be Prime Minister, but they want to actually stick by what they believe in? I wonder if that's the reason. It's just my opinion, really.
I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest with you. I think it's objectively true that Farage does have a bit of an ego, but you would, you know, he's an incredibly influential man. He's got a massive
No Reform
profile.
Party without him, Pops. No Reform Party without him.
100%. You know, he deserves to have a bit of an ego, and the man wants to be Prime Minister. And I think he understands that if you want to be Prime Minister, you can't deal with infighting when your party's so small. But I also just think the way that this has been done, the way this is handled, for me, is raising major alarm bells. Because I think, you know, we've got a couple of years to the election. To be totally frank, and I don't like saying this, but I just think it's true, people will probably have forgotten by then, let's be honest with you, you know, the way the news cycle works. But if this is going to keep happening, if there are going to be Reform candidates that are put on the list that then have a personal falling out with Farage and that are removed, I mean, you need to have smart people, you need to have convicted people who are going to stick their guns on your front bench if you want to fix the country. You know, if this is a one-off, it's not great, but fine. But if this is going to keep happening, that's going to really hurt Reform's chances, even if they do get a majority. Because if they get a majority and end up like the Tories and squabbling and trying to do regicide all the time and I want to be the boss, I'm the most important person, then we're just going to end up in the same gridlock.
I agree,
So
and I think...
I really hope this is a one-off.
I hope so too, because I think it's an important element. I think that there was a sort of seminal moment when Reform showed its teeth and actually it wasn't just this sort of protest party. I believe they have a chance. But you're right. It's like going from a small business to a big business. Either Farage has to understand that he is the focal point and he has to let go of a little bit of the control. I suspect that's probably necessary, and understand that there will be other great orators and people with... I mean, the way to deal with somebody like Lowe is to put him in a, give him a brief that's high profile, and you should be as one. But the overwhelming feeling of people that watch and listen talk in the last 4 days is they feel a bit let down by the squabbling. They feel I think quite desperate, because they put their faith and their belief that there was this political journey they were about to embark on with a new party that wasn't the Labour Party, wasn't the Tory party, and actually might give them a shot at it. So I think Farage, Lowe, all of them need to just... Well, they need to bang their bloody heads together. Talking about banging their heads...
No.
What?
No, I completely agree with you. I've got so much empathy because I'm in the same position. I want Reform to win because I don't want to end up with the same lot of people that ruined the country in the first place.
Completely agree. Can we talk about Orange before you go? Orange, I don't know what her job is, Deputy Prime Minister, Head of Fields. There are many things about this Labour Party and this Labour government I loathe. One of them, this is blatant land grab from farmers. The farming community is being decimated by this tractor tax. It will be. I don't think there's any understanding amongst the Labour Party about how important farmers are for our food, for Christ's sake. I think the whole thing is to grab land, build wind farms, get rid of all the farmers and try and achieve this net zero... I nearly said the wrong word. That isn't going to work, and then we'll have to import it. But I mean, farmers will be forced to sell their... Latest from Orange, sell their fields for less than their potential value if they're seized to build new homes or hospitals under measures in the government's planning and infrastructure bill. Now, I know that the Labour Party came to power, Poppy, and they said, we're going to build houses. And I don't think there's anybody in the land that doesn't think we need more houses. But why are they targeting farmers? Am I wrong? Is there not...
100%.
Is there not...
You can't...
land that used to have petrol stations? There must be land in this country that isn't prime farming land that we can build bloody houses on.
We've got plenty of brownfield that they can use. And again, this whole growth push is pointless if we haven't got food security.
Yeah.
Food security is just as important as our actual defence spending. And to be honest with you, it's another political kick in the teeth, isn't it, towards a group that actually put their trust in Labour.
Yep.
They thought they'd get something different. The Tories have been neglecting them. And this is yet another instance of them going, oh, we forgot about you guys out in the sticks. We only see you in our metropolitan area. So, sorry, we're going to be buying your land. You're not going to get any of the development cost for that. Oh, but you'll be okay because you can go back to your farming business. Oh, wait, no, you can't, because we've ruined that for you as well.
I think it's I think it's incredibly naive, and I'll tell you why. Because he won a lot of seats. That red wall encapsulates a hell of a lot of rural areas, and I think the way they're treating farmers, the way they've treated pensioners, I've talked about the way they're treating veterans, but farmers, I think it's disgusting. I know you've got to go. I want one more comment very quickly on this madness that first emanated yesterday. The Sentencing Council. This is this bunch of weird judges who decide how we're going to treat people. Put out guidance last week saying that if you're an ethnic minority or you're a gender minority or anything, that maybe you should receive a different approach when you're being found guilty of something, and softer punishment maybe, because it might be upsetting for you.
For once, I actually agree with Labour here.
Yes, and me.
Completely right.
Yeah, what's her name? What's she called? Shabana Mahmood. Yeah, the Justice Secretary. Me too.
Yeah, I think she's completely right. I mean, unfortunately, this was also commissioned by the Tories. And guess who they got to head up the Sentencing Council Committee? David Lammy, commissioned by the Tories. Tells you everything you need to know about the Labour Party.
David Lammy, too busy spending £500,000 on food and booze since he became the Foreign Secretary. How can you say that if you break the law in this country, Poppy, right, if you've got a certain colour or a certain sexuality or a certain religion, you're going to get away with it? That's not justice. That's a joke, man.
No, absolutely. I agree with you.
Listen, I know you've got to go, and I'm very, very grateful. They're banging on the door. We say, we love you. Poppy Coburn, Deputy Comment Editor with The Telegraph, thank you very much indeed. We dragged her on today. She's very kind. 4:15, we're live across the UK. This is Talk Drive. So, what do you want to talk about, peeps? The ongoing saga, that is Reform. We told you that the police have launched an investigation into Rupert Lowe. He was accused by his own party of being, well, a bully, a sexist bully. All of this, apparently on the back of the fact that 7 of his staff came out today who work for him inside Parliament and said he's one of the nicest, most genuine and decent people they've ever worked for. That is not going away. There are rumours that Elon Musk says, I could back Rupert Lowe and a breakaway party. We don't want another breakaway party. We want reform to get its head out of its backside and make it work and give us an alternative. Farmers are having their land grabbed by the Labour government. And the CPR guidance from the St John's ambulance is you're not allowed to call a woman, it's a person with breasts. A couple of voice notes. Carl on reform, go.
I've got an issue with this Rupert Law. I like the guy from the point of view he says what he thinks, and I agree with a lot of what he says. But what I can't agree with, he seems to have no respect for this leadership of a political party. And like it or not, he isn't the leader. And you've got to respect the party. You can't just go running to the media and start bad-mouthing them, saying the party is a protest party, calling the leadership, saying that Nigel Farage isn't capable of being Prime Minister.
There you go, that's Carl's thoughts. Yours, 0344 499 1000. Tom's on gender. That didn't sound right. Go.
I went to the hospital on Friday and it was for an X-ray. And I was asked, I have to ask, but are you pregnant? And I said, take a wild guess. And she said, no, I really need an answer. Are you pregnant or not? And I said, seriously, do I look like I could be pregnant? And she said, yeah, but are you or not? I said, I'm a geezer. What do you think? Take a guess. Anyway, they refused me an X-ray.
Refused you an X-ray? Because you were... So you see, I mean, I don't know what's gone wrong with her. Are you a woman? No, I'm a bloke. Are you pregnant? No, I'm a geezer. And they don't even want to ask these bloody questions. Let's go to Bolton, which is brave. Mark, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon.
How you doing, Jazz?
I'm all right, mate. Slight satellite delay to your brain. What's happening?
I'm just thinking about all this reform row.
Yes.
I like everybody. All of them. I like Farage. I think he's a brilliant speaker, but I think that he has a bit of a messiah complex with Rupert Law. I think Rupert Law is could be a better MP.
Orator, speaker, yeah.
Orator, that's it, speaker.
We had Lord Marland on yesterday, who's a Tory peer, but he's a friend of Rupert Lowe's, and he said that Rupert Lowe, who is not doing this for money, he's minted, he's doing this for public service and because genuinely concerned about the state of this country, is incredibly polished, incredibly dedicated. And I've had people say to me in the last 24 hours, he's one of the most impressive new MPs ever. So it brings you round, Mark, to the belief that, I don't know, is Farage's nose, has it been put out of joint because Lowe is great? But for me, and this is what I'd love to ask you, there are many of us who believe, right, that Nigel Farage and reform, however reform is made up, is massively important in the next few years for the future of the United Kingdom. They need to sort their bloody act out, because if they mess this up, I think it will be a big loss for this country, and I dread to think what's going to happen. What, the Labour Party are going to get in for another 5 years? Because nobody's going to trust the Tories again in 4 years' time, trust me.
I really do hope not what you just said happens. I hope this get in the room, be men, and stop the squabbling and say, we're doing this for the people that have paid their £25.
Did you join reform? Did you join reform?
Yes. Yeah.
Good man. All right, listen, my regards to Bolton and to Peter Kay. 420, hello to Gary Mitchell. Jez, you're spot on about Farage and Tommy Robinson. If you are a political party and you want to make the transition from being a protest group to be taken seriously to form the next government, you have to moderate some of your more extreme policies and certainly distance yourself from the likes of Tommy Robinson, because whatever you think of him, the man is politically toxic. I think Farage gets that. I'm not sure that Elon Musk and some members of Reform, including the undoubtedly talented Rupert Lowe, do. Interesting point. 0344 499 1000 is our telephone number. Our Jodie, free of a hangover for Tuesday, is on the phone lines. You can send a voice note. Ryan, smiling already, having had two. WhatsApp us 0344 499 1000. Or you can send a text. Always delighted to somehow get them. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. I'll see you in 3. I'm off for a wee.
Clifford, after the attack in which he killed those 3 women, he then shot himself with a crossbow and is now permanently paralysed. I know. I cried tears for him too. Of course I did. But the judge said the prospect of putting a man in a wheelchair, in restraints, and the disruption it would cause to proceedings meant that he chose not to do that. As far as I'm concerned, drag him out of his wheelchair, drag him up the stairs, into the court, into the box for the defendant, and if necessary, he's shouting and screaming, gag him. I don't care.
I'm more of the view that actually there were political tensions between the 2 men. They had a different view about where the party should go. Rupert Lowe, I think, was becoming quite impatient about some of the points that he was making. And Nigel Farage decided this was not a tension that he would tolerate. And I think these allegations of misbehaviour were more of a cover for something that he wanted to do anyway.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 4:25, so in the midst of doing drive time on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense, as you'll know, I'm a mad racing fan. It's the Cheltenham Festival, day 1. When I say my shirt, include my jacket, my vest, my pants, my socks and my house on the unbeatable Constitution Hill in the Champion Hurdle. One of our bosses who just walked in with a smile the size of I don't know what and said, "Did you see what happened, though? Constitution Hill fell." Oh, right, OK. But I backed the 25-1 outsider. So everybody who's in management at Talk has backed the winner, and I'm sat here losing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. There we go. It's only a bit of fun. Try telling that to me. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk Drive. Gareth has a voice note on reform. Shoot.
From my perspective, I don't know if anyone's noticed a lot that Nigel and the party have been dialing back a lot of their rhetoric and language regarding some of their policies post-winning seats at Parliament. It seems to me that they're trying to ingratiate themselves to Parliament and not rock the boat, as opposed to actually pushing forward the people's mandate. And I feel Rupert Lowe was remaining consistent with his comments, and ultimately at the end of the day he stayed true to what the people want, and Nigel and the party have fallen into the same trap when you get into Parliament. You always do, which is you spend more time with the perks and love what Parliament's about as opposed to the mandate you've been given.
Really interesting point there from Gareth. What do you make of this ongoing reform squabble, my friends? 0344 499 1000. My next guest is a man who freed from the chains of office. I mean, honestly, he was a Tory MP for about 130 years. Now, I mean, we're heading to summer season at Bridlington. Honestly, it's amazing. I mean, Sir John Redwood, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Well, hello, Jeremy. I'm still waiting for that contract to go on the stage. I hope you're going to help me with my Christmas story this year.
I think
because I always do a funny Christmas story. Ought to be part of a panto.
You see, I think he'd be brilliant. I think me and Mike Graham as the Ugly Sisters, and you can be Buttons. Sir John Redwood, I want to know whether there's a slight smirk at the side of your Tory face as you look down and watch the Reform Party squabble. Extraordinary.
Well, I'm an independent commentator these days. I think it's a great pity that Lowe and Farage have fallen out. You're speaking for the many people who have decided to back reform, that they want to see these people get on with each other. And we've now seen three top people, Ben Habib, as well as the two today, falling out, and they need talent if they're going to carry on with their revival. I think it does give the Conservatives an opportunity, because surely now the Conservatives can say to those disaffected voters, you know what, we have learned a really big lesson. We got a lot of things wrong. Some of the things that Reform have been saying are clearly very popular and very sensible. So it will make more of a fight of it. They're opening themselves up by running a civil war.
And this is really interesting. So let's start with Reform, and we'll talk about the Tories, because I put that to a couple of current Tory MPs in a minute. And actually, it was really interesting because they were saying, oh, we perhaps should keep quiet. But let's start with your view. I said just now that I guess when you get into Parliament, you're heading towards some sort of power. The machinations of the system take over, and maybe Nigel Farage as that messenger just said, maybe he's dialed back on some of the rhetoric, understands he's got to play the game, but certainly the wind was with Reform. But you make a very salient point. Rupert Lowe follows Ben Habib. There's been other people. The timing of them reporting Rupert Lowe to the police was extraordinary, literally 24 hours after he'd done that article in the Daily Mail. We've been through arguments about how Reform was a protest organisation. It's become a party. There'll be teething problems. But the overriding view that I've got from the people that watch and listen to this station over the last 24 hours, Sir John, is a feeling of huge disappointment that they believe there seemed to be an enthusiasm for reform and politics that I wasn't feeling, frankly, with any other party. And there seemed to be a wave of sort of excitement about what they could do. This has deflated a hell of a lot of people. Do you think that Nigel Farage's ego is the problem here, or do you think it's just teething problems? Or is it based entirely on men clashing because they want the top job? Where do you see this being based, if you like?
Well, I don't know. And I do think as they've got a proper inquiry and a police inquiry underway, a KC involved, maybe we should just wait and see what they conclude as independent observers of what's going on. You can make the case you just made, and I get lots of people writing to me these days expressing huge disappointment about this bust-up. After all, Reform had moved from being third to being top in some of the polls in a very short space of time, and moved from being a possible challenger party to being, in certainly their own eyes, a contender for prime ministership and biggest party and all that kind of thing, a huge stretch. But if you're going to try and sustain that over 4 years, you can't afford to lose two of your top people and have a flaming row about it all.
I completely agree. It'll be very, very interesting to see where this happens. I mean, I'm getting texts. Margaret in Birmingham says, I think that Nigel will resign and go and work in America with Trump. I think that will be a great loss to the country, but I can't see any way back for Reform as it stands, which I think is very interesting. So much to ask you very quickly, Sir John. Light-hearted, the next one. Campaigners, this in the Telegraph today, have accused the St John's Ambulance of erasing women after the St John's Ambulance issued official CPR guidance where they refuse to call women women. You have to call them people with breasts, Sir John Redwood.
Well, this is just getting absurd, isn't it? And you had a very good little piece earlier with a gentleman saying he was asked whether he was pregnant when he wanted to get some hospital treatment. Well, just use your eyes, just observe. There's no need to go through all that. What you should be concentrating on is what's wrong with you, how can we help you?
Do you know, and that, you know, when you consider, you know, the problems that this country has. I mean, I'm looking, you know, there was a dreadful, the crossbow killer that murdered the ex-girlfriend, her sister and her wife. And I know John Hunt from racing, and John Hunt was in, his impact witness statement was read out today. I mean, it devastated so many people's lives, and he's been jailed, this piece of rubbish, for life, and quite rightly. But when I look at that, right, and when I look at what's happening in the world, and when I think about servicemen and women on the streets, when I think of pensioners freezing, when I think of our NHS, and I think that we're spending time filling out boxes asking men if they're pregnant.
Well, not just
did you
time,
hear me
but
say
money.
earlier, a
You know,
midwife with 23 years experience being given a written warning because she said to a couple, congratulations on the birth of your baby, and they went, you can't decide, your baby boy, you can't decide the gender of our kid, and she got a written warning, John. It's madness, man.
Yeah, and it's not just waste of time, it's waste of money, because they're appointing lots of people to put in these forms and train these staff to do these things, when the rest of us just want talented nurses and doctors and assistants to clear the waiting lists and to deal with the conditions that people present. And people would explain to the doctors and nurses anything relevant about their own circumstances. But you don't need to write a history of who their family was and what their sexual orientation is and all that kind of thing, if they need a better knee or something.
Do you think this woke madness will end? Maybe not in our lifetime. Do you think it'll do a full turn
Well,
around?
I think it's on the turn.
You do?
You know, you guys on Common Sense TV are doing a great job, and you're speaking for millions of us. And I think we all now feel liberated that we can condemn it, because we did go through a period when it's extremely dangerous. Certainly if you're an MP, you felt if you said the wrong thing about one of these things, you would be the subject of a great investigation.
That's a really interesting admission, and it's really interesting actually, because, you know, led by Mike and Julia and Piers when he came and all that. Actually, you know, I do feel you should, you know, any sort of democracy, you should be able to have your say. You could stand in front of somebody, John, and disagree until the last breath comes out of your body with everything they say. But they have a right, but you have a right as well. Can I ask you about a couple of other things that really have garnered some interest this week, and quite rightly. Today we hear from our Ange, the Deputy Prime Minister. How extraordinary is that? She's got a new government planning and infrastructure bill. I think the land grab of our farming community is a disgrace, a national disgrace. I think it's a land grab for wind farms, and I think the way that farmers have been lied to by Sir Keir Starmer's government is beyond the pale. Apparently now they'll be forced to sell their fields and their land for a lot less than their potential value if the government chooses to seize them to build homes or hospitals. Now, just from my point of view, and I've railed for years with MPs going, we need more homes, but not in my constituency. We do need to build more homes, and there might be people upset. But why are we targeting farmers, the lands that create food for our people? There surely, Sir John Redwood, you worked in environment, I know that, there must be land in this country we can build on, surely.
Yeah, well, that is a disgrace, and it's a further attack, because they've had the big national insurance hit if they dare to employ people, and they've had the inheritance tax hit, so that when they want to pass it on, they have to sell a load of land at that point, and then the farm may no longer be viable or a good unit. Small business as a whole have been mightily hit. But I mean, surely the first thing they need to do is to reduce the number of people coming into the country. There is this amazing demand for homes. We've been inviting in or allowing in 750,000 extra people every year for a long time. And that means you have to build 3 cities the size of Southampton every year just to handle the new people coming in. It's too much. No wonder they end up taking food growing land, because we are inviting too many people in. It's pressure on services. Where do you find all the doctors? Where do you find all the utilities to back them up?
Couldn't agree more. And the other thing that came out this week, Sir John, and then we'll let you go, and this is really, again, you did this for a long, long time. And I should point out to people, they never, ever text me and go, Sir John Redwood was part of the Tory government, because you were a vocal voice about immigration, very vocal voice against the government for many, many years. I'd love your take on this. There's a thing called the Sentencing Council. They actually time to support the Labour Party. Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, last week reacted to them saying, if you come from a certain ethnic group or a certain religious group, or you're certainly, you know, going through a sexual whatever, when you get sentenced, it said to judges, you should be a little bit more lenient and give softer sentences. So there's me going, What, so if I commit a crime, if I come from another country or I want to become a woman or so, I don't know, I'm going to... That's ludicrous. And she jumped up and down. Fair play to her, Shabana Mahmood. They've railed back the Sentencing Council and said, it's none of your business, we're independent. Maybe you think I'm outrageous. This is where I want Trump. I would sack that Sentencing Council if I was in government. I'd find a way in an absolute goddamn heartbeat. How embarrassing is that? What, justice depends on the colour of the skin or your sexual orientation? That's ridiculous.
Well, it's dreadful, and there's been a revulsion by practically all MPs of all parties, and quite rightly so. So the challenge to Parliament is, you make the laws, you appoint these people, you pay the salaries, get on with it. What don't you understand? We don't want independent bodies coming up with this left-wing twaddle that annoys most people and is so obviously unfair. So use your powers. Labour's got a majority to die for. They can change the law today. If they proposed a law to say that Sentencing Council can't do that, you know what? The Conservative opposition would back them. They would only need half an hour. There wouldn't need to be a long debate because common sense says you need to change that decision.
And there's the point. You did politics for many, many years. I've never understood when a politician, a prime minister or a cabinet minister is delivered practically an open goal. To me, this is an absolute... What's his name? Trump would have done this in 5 minutes. They'd have been sacked. This is a
executive
sort of
order. Yeah.
Yeah, executive order. This is where Starmer should stand up, as you quite rightly say, and go, I'm not having this. This is absolute rubbish. This is disrespectful to hard-working men and women in this country. That's not happening. Because you do understand, don't you? We all get the feeling that when you read stuff like this, you feel like the odds are against us increasingly in this country.
They're not on our side. And, you know, they have this enormous potential power, which they don't use. There are so many of these independent bodies. And I think it's quite wrong for governments of all persuasions to make them so-called independent bodies, because we, the taxpayers, pay the salary. We have to put up with the quality of service they deliver. We have to listen to their often stupid views. We want our ministers to get a grip on them, maybe abolish them and take the matter back into the department itself to run, or appoint people to run them that have the common sense view so they won't be dragged before your programme as people who are saying the wrong thing.
JR, you are a legend. I love having you on. I'm going to get you that Christmas gig, I promise you. So John Redwood, former Tory cabinet minister on Jeremy Kyle's Drive, 22 minutes to 5 o'clock. We're live across the UK. You want to be on? It's really simple. So 344 499 1000. We're back in 3.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back 20 minutes to 5 o'clock. We're live across the UK. This is Talk Drive. Mike, of course, as you heard, they're back tomorrow morning from 6, but he'll be here after 5 because he's a very busy man. Are we doing a voice note straight away before we get to a very angry farmer? Derek, on reform, shoot.
I think some deep breaths need to be taken between them all, a step back from the brink, and they need to really think about what the priorities are. As one of the great unwashed general public, me and my wife think the priority is for them to get doing what they've been doing and do it well. For the likes of Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe to start saying all stirring up this undercurrent, this is so wrong. Nigel Farage has his faults, but he's not wrong on the fact that you can't make the party old before its time. It's young and it's got to be allowed to grow.
Very interesting, Derek. Thank you. What do you make, my friends? 0344 499 1000. Hello to Ben in Plymouth. He says, Jez, what does all this reform squabbling matter? Even if they win, there will be no country left to govern once the commie Labour have destroyed it over the next 4 years. Afternoon to Steve in Cambridge. Jez, at 69 years of age, I've endured both political parties and they are self-serving and unreliable. I've just renewed my membership of Reform. They honestly are our only chance in the UK, so I hope for our sakes that this is just a blip. I love the show. Reform is important to me. I hope they can sort it out. Simon's in Nottingham. Hello, Si. He says, I was at the... are we reading that out? Oh, fine. He says, the world's changed. I was at a bar and a pub some years ago and this lady stood next to me and I will just say she wasn't slim. I said to her, when is it due? And she slapped me in the face, which I thoroughly deserved. That's Simon in Nottingham. Barry... Not from Barry. I joined Reform paying 25 quid at the beginning of this year with enthusiasm about change. I genuinely believed. After hearing Farage go on and on about Trump to excess and saying that after the Oval Office spat that Zelensky needed a wake-up call, which I feel was a disgrace, and now what is happening with Rupert Lowe, I am sad and not feeling the same way, and I'm leaving the party as long as Farage is in charge. A lot of people feel like this. I was speaking to Mike earlier. A lot of people phoning into breakfast this morning, leaving voice notes and saying, we feel let down. It's about Farage's ego. Is it that? Are you like Derek, who thinks that he set the party up and he should be allowed to run it? Phil's in Essex. Great shows ever, Jez. With any function really important to build a high-performing team with great skills and different perspectives to the leader. I am absolutely convinced Reform have this and could build it further. You only have to look at the previous government and the current Labour's team, Lammy, Rayner, Streeting. Really, really poor and incapable individuals. They need to bang their heads together and get it sorted. Colleen, this woke madness calling a woman a person with breasts and asking men if they're pregnant needs stopping. And the way to do this is to cull all diversity managers. And finally, Claire, hear Sir John Redwood, a common-sense Conservative voice in a sea of madness. Couldn't agree more. Right. The other thing that's happened today, and we've talked about this incessantly on this show, is, we talked about how, pensioners have been screwed by this government. They've had that winter fuel allowance removed. We talk about how veterans have fought for this country and are left on the streets whilst illegal migrants lord it up in 4-star hotels with mobile phones, which for me is an utter disgrace. Equally disgraceful is the way this Labour government has targeted the British farming community. You'll know about this tractor tax. In April 2026, you need to give us a percentage of tax on the value of your property, completely ignoring the fact that everyday farmers who pass their farms down the generations take a really, really small salary. It's about moving it on. It's also about creating food. No, Labour wants to take their land, build wind farms and try and do this net zero crap, which, as we all know, isn't going to work. Well, it went a step further today. Angela Rayner, who, of course, is the Environmental Secretary, leader of... she seems to be everything for somebody, which is extraordinary, has announced that farmers, this is in her new planning and infrastructure bill, farmers will be forced to sell their fields for less than they're worth if the government went, I want that field to build a house in. Now, I am all for building houses, but as I said to Sir John Redwood, who was the Environment Secretary, there must be brown lands, there must be other... And he said, absolutely there are. Here's one man who's the most popular farmer in the United Kingdom, Gareth Wynne-Jones. A very good afternoon, sir.
Sound there, how are you?
I'm all right. Hey, but where are you, lad? What are you doing out with sheep?
That's Yorkshire, that is. This is Wales, man.
Oh, lovely. Right. Whose coat is that at? Next to you on the dance floor. You're looking very smart. On a serious note, my friend, we've talked incessantly, you and I, over the months. I think it's a complete disgrace because Labour looked you, the farming community, in the eye and said, we're going to look after you. How has this betrayal, and now further betrayal today, how does it feel to the farming community, Gareth?
I'm going to use a big word. It really comes to a point where we understand that the Labour government and the Labour Party hate us as a community and as a people. That's how it feels, because, you know, we feel downtrodden, we felt let down, but now, you know, they're going to be taking that land away from farmers with no choice. And that is absolutely disgraceful. And I'm like you, the right houses in the right places, you know, and I'm not against wind farms. There's wind farms in the sea in front of us here. You know, I'm for solar, as long as it's not on farmland, it's on industrial buildings and on houses. Great. But we are a small country, okay? Let's not forget it. And we are letting thousands and thousands of people in.
That's why we need to build bloody houses, because our borders are open,
but
mate.
as well, Jezza, we need to feed them people. Don't you forget that as well.
That's true, yeah.
Not just that we need to build houses for them, we need to feed them. And as the global issues are, from Ukraine, wars, you know, famine, problems, and they're blaming climate for everything. Why aren't this government getting behind the people that are feeding them every day?
Absolutely.
And there's a saying, don't bite the hand that feeds you. This is going to come back and absolutely bite them in the backside. I am telling you, as a farmer, we're seeing prices of beef going through the roof, prices of lamb going through the roof, because they've been pushing their draconian measures on us in Wales. Don't forget this. We've been under a Labour government for 25 years. 25 years. We are absolutely sick to our back teeth of these people. You know, they say Wales is a nature-depleted country. Well, we've had 25 years of their environmental and wildlife programmes and their schemes. You know, think about what's happening to the people that are producing the food. But what I will tell you, as somebody that has a big following on social media, and I am getting so much feedback and support, people are backing the farmers and not government. This government is a one-trick pony.
I couldn't agree more. And I listen, I sit here every single day, and I'll put it in basic layman. I have to say actually, I don't have to say anything layman's terms. Sod it. I'm saying what I want. I don't understand when you come into power. Maybe if you've got a 180-seat majority, you don't give a toss. Maybe you start to believe your own publicity. But here is, for me, the reality. If you attack the sorts of groups who I believe are the bedrock underlined of the United Kingdom, pensioners, OK, Gareth, who have paid their tax and their stamp for 50 years and deserve to be warm, deserve to see a doctor. No, not some illegal migrant who's in a hotel seeing a doctor. No, Beryl, who's 80, who's freezing her bits off in Bury, she needs looking after. For veterans who put their lives on the line for this country and they're homeless. No, but hold on a second, illegal migrants are in hotels. And for farmers, right, who are certainly not in it for money. And when some dumb, idiotic Labour minister, I wish I could just take him on, saying, so you reckon he's got or she's got a farm worth £3 million? Probably takes £30,000 to £40,000 out a year, probably a quarter of what you earn as a bloody MP. This is about passing it down generations, and also, you stupid nincompoop, feeding you and your bloody family, and that's what they don't understand. And you're right, and for me, sitting here, you are attacking organisations and groups who have made this country what it is, and it's a recipe for bloody disaster by a mile.
Yeah, and do you know what? We wanted a change in this country. We needed a fresh start. And, you know, he stood in the NFU conference promising how he was going to protect family farms and how he said that losing a family farm is not like losing a business. This is the same man and the same government that are taking everything away from us. You know, We work 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and I'm not looking for charity. I'm looking for a fair price for what I'm producing. But what people don't understand, we get a 1% return for what I've got behind us. That's our business. This is all we've got, is the land to produce the food, and that is our working capital. If they wanted to do something with inheritance tax, yeah, tax your Dysons and tax your Bill Gates, but protect the family farms.
Gareth?
So any family farm, passing that down to the next generation as a working farm to produce food, give it to them for nothing.
Listen to me.
Pass it on.
Listen to me. I hate to move on, but I have to. But I'll tell you this. This station, Talk, is 1,000,000% behind the farming community. We will not stop until this government realises we appreciate it. Gareth Wyn-Jones on Talk Drive. Back in 3.
Clifford, after the attack in which he killed those 3 women, he then shot himself with a crossbow and is now permanently paralysed. I know. I cried tears for him too. Of course I did. But the judge said the prospect of putting a man in a wheelchair, in restraints, and the disruption it would cause to proceedings meant that he chose not to do that. As far as I'm concerned, drag him out of his wheelchair, drag him up the stairs, into the court, into the box for the defendant, and if necessary, he's shouting and screaming, gag him. I don't care.
I'm more of the view that actually there were political tensions between the 2 men. They had a different view about where the parties should go. Rupert Lowe, I think, was becoming quite impatient about some of the points that he was making. And Nigel Farage decided this was not a tension that he would tolerate. And I think these allegations of misbehaviour were more of a cover for something that he wanted to do anyway.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
To capitulate my feeling about the Cheltenham Festival Day 1, the wife's doing brilliantly. 5 to 5 to the phone lines. Jerry's in London. 2 minutes only. Jerry, what you got?
That's great, Jeremy. No, great show. I want to talk about reform. No one's mentioned this on any of the programmes I've listened to. It's the structure of reform that is the problem. 2 directors, Nigel and Zia, control everything. They pick the MPs, everything. Although the members think they have a vote, it's like the EU. No matter how many times you vote, if you don't vote the way Nigel and Zia want you to vote, they're going to say, guess what? Oh, go back and vote again. Now, isn't that familiar?
Do you think that it will be the beginning of the end of reform, or do you think they can get over what many are describing as a blip, but others are saying is terminal?
No, they won't if they don't do the next step. The next step is really what they need to do is they need to bring in someone like a CEO at the top level. They then need to bring in another layer like Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe, or people of that stature who will actually bring forward the MPs. They won't be Nigel and Zia will not be able to fire anyone. So it'll be literally a CEO defining the structure, the big picture. Then you've got a layer underneath with people who are setting up the local.
Will you still vote for them if they make those changes? Yes or no? Don't mean to rush you.
If they make that changes, you've got a true democratic party.
What if they don't? What if they don't?
If they don't, I would vote for the policies that push forward democracy, but I would think twice. And I know this seems terrible to say, but I think too many people are putting all their faith in Nigel. They need to stop, take a deep breath and say the party has to be democratic. If you don't have that, you don't have the bedrock to grow a party.
Couldn't agree more. Jerry, don't think me rude. I've got to move on. We appreciate your call. It's a voice note. Mars on reform. Go.
I'm finding this whole reform issue absolutely mind-boggling. And I think it's sort of selfish on both sides because we need reform more than ever before. And if they jeopardise the party over their own egos, we're absolutely knackered. This country will be going down the pan even more than ever before. They need to come together, bang their heads together, sort their differences out and get on with a damn job. We need reform, full stop.
Couldn't agree more. Tony, on Sir John Redwood, go.
Just like to say, it's always a pleasure to hear Sir John Redwood on your show. He is the Prime Minister we should have had all those years ago leading this country. Common sense thinking, absolute legend. The more I hear him, the more I wish we had him as Prime Minister years ago.
Couldn't agree more. And actually, one of the things I will say about Sir John Redwood, right, he was a loud voice in the Tories against many things they did. Jeffrey in Essex, so the news at 5. You've got 1.5 minutes, my friend. Go.
I'll be quick, Jeremy. Just to support the lovely Poppy you was talking to earlier, I recently had to go to our local hospital to see the dermatologist for a mole check, and I too was asked, first of all, I'm a 79-year-old man.
Right, hold on. You're a 79-year-old man, yeah?
Yeah, that's it. Anyway, I had to fill out this questionnaire. One of the questions on there was, am I breastfeeding? And am I pregnant? Well, where's this bloody world going to? So the quick answer, get rid of all these damned diversity officers, which save loads of money for the NHS for a start, but 100 of them.
My dad is no longer here, bless him, so you're going to have to be him for 30 seconds. What do you make of this stupid goddamn world we now live in? Is a 79-year-old man pregnant? What a load of old crap, eh?
Absolutely load of crap, isn't it? Terrible.
Well, listen, it's great to have you on. And you haven't been breastfeeding, though. You're all right, yeah?
No, I'm all right, but my wife is a female. She's not a person who has breasts.
She's a female.
Yeah. Just very briefly, I might say this. I always remember this damn government. As the lovely, wonderful Margaret Thatcher said, the socialists always run out of other people's money.
You're absolutely right, my friend. There he is, 79-year-old Jeffrey, who went to hospital to check on a mole and was asked if he was pregnant or breastfeeding. The world's gone bucking mad. It's almost 5. We're live across the UK on the only station that talks common sense and gives you the chance to be involved. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Please, if you want to text the show, start your message with the word talk. More after the news at 5, which is next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, my friends. Hour 2 of Tuesday's Drive Show. This is JK on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. You're very welcome. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to be on, I don't know what you want to talk about. There's so much to bloody well talk about. The police have launched an investigation into Rupert Lowe, the Reform MP, thrown out by Nigel Farage for apparently attacking the chairman, Zia Youssef, and being sexist in the way and bullying in the way he treated his staff. They, all 7 of them from the Commons, came out today and said this is utter tosh. He's an amazing man and good to work with. There are major problems with reform, and you might have heard Sir John Redwood, ex-Tory cabinet minister, earlier saying now is the time for the Conservatives to take advantage, but that hasn't happened. What do you make of the whole reform debacle? Many of you, actually, the general feeling is you feel let down. You feel like you were grabbing hold of something you believed in. You were frustrated by what was going on in this country, and reform offered you an outlet. You now worry, like I do, that that's going to disappear forever. 0344 499 1000. You might have a view on Labour's certainly more disgusting than ever approach to farmers. The latest land grab means that our Ange can take a farmer's field and pay him a lot less than it's worth simply if she wants to build houses on it. This is on the back of the tractor tax that says we want lots of tax on your £1 million farm even though you haven't got the money and you've passed it down. Do the farming community have it right when they say this Labour Party bloody well hates us? And basically my favourite story of the day, I do, but we had Jeffrey on 79 before the news. He went to have a mole checked and was asked if he was breastfeeding or was pregnant. That's what we've come to, my friends. Campaigners have accused the St John's ambulance today of erasing women after they issued official CPR guidance. If you're giving... See, this is CPR guidance. Now, call me boring. If you're performing CPR on somebody, you're trying to change and save their lives. You're not trying to work out whether they're going to be offended. If you, I don't know, whatever. But apparently, you have to be very respectful and you can't say, I'm giving CPR to a woman. No, it's a person with breasts. Men have breasts. 0344 499 1000. We'll head north to Lancashire. Mark, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Jeremy.
Have you got breasts?
No, I've not. No, I've not. I don't use pronouns either.
Oh, all right then.
I just wanted to say that Nigel Farage basically seems to be dragging the Reform Party back towards the centre, back towards the wet Tories, where the Tories have been, that he's always been saying that he wants to destroy, and I just can't see the point of it. What's the point of another wet centrist small C Conservative party?
I think the point, and I'm not sticking up for Farage or Lowe because I literally am like the rest of you. I just feel a little bit deflated because I was part of, if you like, not a movement, but I believed that we were finally going to have something a little bit different. I made a point earlier, you might not have heard it. I'd love your take on it, which is the reality of British politics, unlike, of course, Trump, who can just write an executive order and sack people, which is brilliant, is the reality that the further and nearer you get to power, you have to play the game, you have to play the system, you have to... And that might be, not a justification, by the way, Nigel doing his best to play the game to get the ultimate goal, whereas Rupert Lowe, staying true to his reform values, is spouting, quite rightly, about immigration. Let's not forget, reform was based, I would say, 100% entirely on the fact that millions of us are hacked off, that hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants are flooding this country and taking advantage of how soft and generous we are to the detriment of the British people. Isn't that true?
Yes, exactly that. But Nigel's been in interviews saying that he doesn't support mass deportations and saying that we need to work with Islam. Well, how does that work? That's just a wet centrist position as far as I'm concerned. And I'll tell you what I think's going to happen. Robert Jenrick now is positioning himself far to the right of Farage on a lot of these issues. Now, if Jenrick takes control of the Tory party, Farage is going to find himself stranded on an island of wetness that he's created for himself. He's either going to have to U-turn on all these issues, or all the reformers like me are just going to go back to the Tories. Then where is he then? Now, I'll tell you another thing. Lee Anderson has got a very, very good instinct for self-preservation. He's going to be the first person that's going to smell blood in the water around Farage, and he's going to be back to the Tories. before you can say boo.
How many parties has Lee Anderson been in? About 11.
He was in Labour, then he was in the Conservatives, then he was in Reform. You know, he's accused Sadiq Khan of being run by Islamists. Now, suddenly, when they've got a Muslim chairman, he doesn't say boo about Islam all of a sudden.
I do think it'll be really interesting to see whether actually Reform, in its attempt to polish itself, loses sight of the people that supported it. I also think, and I said it yesterday, I got slaughtered for saying it, be very interesting to see, because I don't think Badenoch lasts as the Tory leader. I don't care what anybody says. I think Jenrick is a great politician. I think he should have been elected. I think it scared a lot of Tories. If they see a chink in the armour of Reform, and if they moved a little bit to the right, you're absolutely right, because Jenrick, from day one, has spoken the right language. When he went to the Home Office, he was never, but he went to the Home Office to keep an eye. This is true. He was sent to keep an eye on, what's that woman called? I forget her name. Help me out. What was her name? The Home Secretary. Come on. No, not Priti Patel, the other one that got to Suella Braverman, right? And everybody said, oh, you know, he's wet. Within 6 months, he saw the reality of what was going on in this country, and Robert Jenrick's political, I think, nous told him what to think. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Mark in Lancashire, we appreciate the call. We're heading right down south. What a lovely part of the world Dorset is. Pete, you're on Talk Drive.
Hello, good afternoon. I've been on your show a few times, but I'm getting more and more depressed listening to what is happening in the country on a daily basis. And I'm as British as they come. And I've had your guy, Mr. Wyn Jones, the farmer, come on the TV this afternoon, and he's used a word this afternoon which I'm afraid, in my view, is starting to resonate around the whole country. And he said it's the word hate. And I'm a very reasonable kind of person, but I'm afraid to say that when he talks about biting the government in the backside because there's the word hate, this is the tip of that iceberg as far as I'm concerned. And you know, I'm listening to your wonderful we listen to your wonderful show all half the day, and you have great presenters, and it's all talk. I'm afraid, in my view, there should be a program, even your own, called Action, because in 4 years' time, with what the government have done in the last 10 months here, is whoever may get in power, whether it be Jenrick, Farage, or whoever you like, the fact is the damage may be so bad in 4 years' time that it'll be irreparable. And whoever does get in will have such a mountain to climb that by the time their 4 or 5 years is up, they'll be out because they never managed to repair the damage that's been caused by this government.
One thing I can tell you, Pete, and I don't mean to rush you, but one thing I can tell you, we will continue to speak the truth, and yeah, there'll be disappointments along the way, and right now I feel exactly like the rest of you. I feel very let down, and I think that actually the frustration for many Reform supporters and voters is we feel like they've dropped the ball. Pete and Dorset, thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000 to my next guest, Deputy Editor of Spike, Fraser Myers. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Pleasure. I'm going to throw a few things at you, mate. I'd love your take on this Reform debacle. Is this ego? Is this Farage trying to become electable and Rupert Lowe sticking to his values? Because the overriding feeling, and I was talking to Mike this morning, he said that the whole of breakfast this morning, all the voice notes, all the calls, everybody's saying the same thing. And this is summed up, actually, by a wonderful, wonderful text I've just got from Graham Short in Birmingham. He says, Reform sucked millions of us into the sweet shop. It was utterly fantastic. And the next time we went down to the shop, we found it had been closed down. I'm gutted. I think a lot of people feel like that right now, Fraser.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, whether it's personal or political, I mean, let's not forget that Farage does seem to fall out with everyone at some point. I mean, we're on the third Farage party now. He's fallen out with so many people. Whoever's to blame as well. I mean, it seems like, you know, there is going to be a police investigation into Rupert Lowe's
yeah, but let's balance this,
like
and I'm not taking any side, but let's balance that by saying that the 7 people who worked in Parliament for Rupert Lowe issued a joint 7-person statement today saying he was the most generous, balanced, nice, down-to-earth person they'd ever worked for. So who is telling the truth? I've no idea, but his team statement would refute any of that. So what is this about? But it's bigger than that. I feel like it's a huge, huge, huge own goal. I really do.
Yeah, that's right. And I think as you're saying, you know, the thing that people want is an alternative in politics to the mainstream You know, wherever you are in politics, loads of people who even voted for Labour are sick of Labour. Loads of people knew they couldn't stomach voting for the Tories at the last election, and I don't think they're going to have forgiven them by the time the next one comes around. So to have that possible alternative seemingly blow up, self-destruct even, you know, let's face it, by the time the next election comes around, the attacks on reform will be or would be just out of this world. They'd have to face all kinds of accusations, but they've blown themselves up already at this hurdle. So yeah, I totally understand people's disappointment and frustration wherever the blame lies, and I'm with you. I have no idea. I haven't picked a side here.
No.
And I'm sure more will come out in
to have
the
a
watch.
Reform viewer just say to me on air, if Nigel Farage isn't careful, he's going to be stranded on an island of wetness, tells me everything about how people are perceiving this. Now, Fraser, deputy editor of The Amazing Spiked, I don't want you to take the next question the wrong way. Do you breastfeed?
I've never tried it. I don't think I'm capable of it.
Are you pregnant?
To be honest,
are you pregnant?
I'm not pregnant.
Love your reaction to my
that really could be taken the wrong way. That could offend someone, whether they're a man or a woman.
Well, tough titty, welcome to talk. You see what I did there? Tough titty, never mind. So this is my favourite story of the week. Campaigners have accused the St John's Ambulance Chorale of erasing women after issuing official CPR guidance. When you're in the middle of CPR trying to save somebody's life, don't say lady or woman. No, you're a person with breasts. Honestly, I will implode. Ryan says, honestly, you need to go and lie in a dark room on your own. We can't even call a woman with breasts now. It's a person with breasts. Woman is sexist. Thoughts, Fraser?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually shocking. I mean, this kind of language, you know, it's bad enough when you hear about it in some woke university. But when you hear it in the context of St John's Ambulance, or it's incredibly common in the NHS as well, you think, these are people who are supposed to deal with biology. You know, medicine saving lives you can't be in denial about biology here. You can't be in denial about the obvious observable reality of sex, and yet it's infected there as well. That's when you think really the world has gone mad, and you know we are in deep trouble. You do see this language in the NHS. You do see that how it's crept in.
Did you hear Jeffrey? Did you hear 79-year-old Jeffrey into the news at 5? He went to the hospital to have a look at they were looking at a mole, and they asked I mean, honestly, you'd think I was losing the plot. They asked a 79-year-old man if he had breasts and was pregnant. A 79-year-old man with a todger.
Well, exactly. You do. I feel I'm glad that he hasn't felt like he's lost his mind, because it's just it's just an assault on reality, an assault on common sense. And then you almost start to distrust, well, if they're going to ask questions like that of an elderly gentleman, how can you trust them on anything? You know, I would worry about a GP like that, for instance. You know, what other problems are they going to mistake? How can they be so silly? How can they have lost their moorings on reality so easily? It's very, very worrying.
It's patently been sent from above. It's patently a paper opportunity or a box-ticking exercise. But as you quite rightly say, the reality of that is spreading the most awful message. And it was another example this week. I wanted to ask you on this. Do you know what the Sentencing Council is? This is a bunch of sort of judges who decide well, the Sentencing Council sort of tells judges, I should put it like this, how they should behave in terms of looking at the statute book and making a decision. A couple of weeks ago, and I rarely support the Labour Party or Shabana Mahmood, but I will in this instance, because a couple of weeks ago, the ridiculous Sentencing Council said, and I quote, if you come from a sort of, a different sexual background or an ethnic background, or you're a minority group, even if you've committed a heinous crime, I think judges should create sort of softer punishments. So, what are you talking about? Shabana Mahmood wrote to them and said, I know you're not under my jurisdiction, but this is crap, frankly. This is rubbish. And they wrote back and said, nothing to do with you. Now, if this was America, our Donald would have signed an executive order and sacked these idiots straight away. Are we literally now living, Fraser Mars, in a country that says that if you commit a serious crime, your sentence will be half that if your colour of your skin, your religion or your sexuality is different than what? Other people? That is ludicrous and dangerous, isn't it?
Absolutely. Every aspect of this story is outrageous. You have the two-tier justice that is implied in this by the fact that people will be given different sentences according to what kind of person they are. No, you should look at the severity of the crime and the circumstances of the crime, nothing else, not what kind of person you are, not what your circumstances are, not your race or gender or sexuality. It's absolutely outrageous. It would be outrageous the other way around, of course. If we were to add to someone's sentence because they were black, that would be absolutely disgusting. It's just as disgraceful to take away from their sentence because they're black.
Do the sentencing council, who I don't know who they're made up of, idiots, do they honestly think? And to me, that's I'm going to say something quite outrageous. To me, situations like this, councils, quangos, authorities that spout this sort of rubbish, they do far more for the problems, I think, to make it worse in this country. That's going to create tension between different ethnic groups and different minority groups, isn't it? And it's going to cause huge frustration, understandable frustration.
That's absolutely right. It can only create division and tension. But, you say, who are the sentencing council? Well, they were set up in the Blair years. So they have no authority. They've been given this authority by Parliament, and it's outrageous for them to slap down an elected minister who has raised a completely reasonable point. I'm with you here. I completely back Shabana Mahmood on this, and I hope she goes further. But
as Sir John Redwood said, and I thought he was absolutely spot on, why the hell isn't this government with a 180-seat majority, literally within an hour, with cross-party agreement, getting this organisation either cancelled or bringing a law that says that's absolute rubbish? Because that, you could talk about playing the political game, that would garner huge support across the political divide, wouldn't it?
It absolutely would. That's what they should do. That's the right thing to do. But unfortunately, I think Starmer, he is a man in the Blair mould. He believes in outsourcing political decisions or decisions like this to unelected bodies, to quangos.
Yeah, outsourcing in brackets, not making a bloody decision, close brackets.
Exactly. Let someone else decide. I mean, there's partly an element of weakness, not wanting to decide. All these sort of independent bodies, making them arm's length from politics. But there's also a more sinister element where, when Blair set up a lot of these bodies, Thatcher set up a lot of them too. It's not entirely, this is a cross-party problem. Then they get to make decisions that are often in the mould of the government that set them up. So, so they can outlast the government that we throw out. And that is a real problem for democracy. We have far too many of these quangos that no one elected, that are simply appointed, and they often reflect whatever the view is of the establishment at the time. And we have an establishment today that is extraordinarily woke, has bizarre ideas about race and gender, and that's what's being reflected in these sentencing guidelines. But we need the elected government to step in.
Couldn't agree more.
To say, actually, we take this seriously. Not on our watch, thank you very much.
Couldn't agree more, Fraser. It was great to have you on, the deputy editor of the amazing Spiked, Fraser Myers. Thank you very much indeed. 5:20. If you are on the way back from the Cheltenham Festival, have been watching it on television, I hope you've been more successful than me. I've had a crap afternoon. Now even my 16-year-old son has had... He said, if I'd had a bet in the Champion Hurdle, I'd have backed Golden Ace. Get lost. What is wrong? Go to school. Shouldn't he be looking at horse racing at that age? It's absolutely outrageous. What sort of parent tells his 6-year-old son about the Cheltenham Festival? I'm taking him on Friday. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk Drive. It's 5:20. In the next hour, 40 minutes, Mike Graham from Breakfast. And here's a man next. One of the few Tories I like, because he answers questions sometimes. Conservative for Stockton West, Matt Vickers. Next on Drive. We're coming back in 3.
Clifford, after the attack in which he killed those 3 women, he then shot himself with a crossbow and is now permanently paralysed. I know. I cried tears for him too. Of course I did. But the judge said the prospect of putting a man in a wheelchair, in restraints, and the disruption it would cause to proceedings meant that he chose not to do that. As far as I'm concerned, drag him out of his wheelchair, drag him up the stairs, into the court, into the box for the defendant, and if necessary, he's shouting and screaming, gag him. I don't care.
I'm more of the view that actually there were political tensions between the 2 men. They had a different view about where the parties should go. Rupert Lowe, I think, was becoming quite impatient about some of the points that he was making. And Nigel Farage decided this was not a tension that he would tolerate. And I think these allegations of...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
At the home of common sense talk it is. 0344 499 1000 is my telephone number. JK till 7. We say a very good evening. Our next guest is an MP for Stockton West, and he's got that many jobs in the shadow cabinet. He's in charge of crime, policing, fire, illegal immigration, rose petal demonstrations and golf lessons. Good afternoon, Matt Vickers. How are you?
All good, all good. Loving life, Jeremy, loving life.
Stop smiling, because Reform are in a mess. I know exactly what's going on with you, Vickers. Look at that grin. Quick view of yours on that. Actually, a question, serious question for you. Is your party's response to say nothing to allow them to tear themselves to bits, or is this not an opportunity, serious question, for the Tories to go, actually, we were wrong to label everything that the Reform said as far right. We need to make right here and stand and say to people, look, we understand we've made mistakes, but there is a sensible answer here. Why are you not more vocal?
Well, I'll let you do all that for me, I think. No, do you know what? It's their problems, it's their internal politics. I think it's for them to... I mean, if anybody wants commentary or information on it, there seems to be plenty going on Twitter. I don't know, that's for them to fight about, and I think they've got form for it. They seem to fall out regularly, but you know,
you're grinning, Vickers. You're grinning.
I'm always happy, Jeremy. I'm always happy. It's because I get to see you, you know, brightening up my day.
Listen, this many jobs you have: shadow crime, policing, and illegal migration. I want to talk about a couple of things. This extraordinary story, and it's very rare that this station and I would support a Labour government minister, but I'm 100%, and I hope you are, behind Shabana Mahmood. This sentencing council crap is ludicrous. If you are a different or a minority ethnic group, religious group, or sexual orientation, whatever the hell it is, you have been told, the Sentencing Council have told judges to be softer in their approach. What is the Tories' response to this? This was set up, the Sentencing Council, during the Blair years. If this was Trump, he'd sack them tomorrow, Matt Vickers. They're a disgrace, man.
This is the two-tier policing we've all been talking about, the two-tier justice system that we've all been talking about under Keir Starmer. And do you know how it came out? How would it have come out otherwise? It came out because Robert Jenrick spotted it, was eagle-eyed, spotted it, brought it to the fore, and now Labour are trying to cover the backsides. But the reality is, I'm sure there is actually 2 occasions on which they were consulted on this and let it roll on. It is a disaster. We need to do everything we can to prevent it. Robert's determined to do everything he can. He's drafted law. He's going to change the law to prevent them doing this, and he's going to take it to court if necessary. He's going to fight tooth and nail. It is not acceptable that the hard-working men and women across this country who pay the tax should be judged any differently based on the colour of their skin, based on whether they're male or female. It is just not acceptable.
And there is no part of my brain that says that any politician of any persuasion can think that or a law or a rule like that is going to be anything other than completely and utterly divisive and cause undue misery. It's ridiculous.
I'm sure isn't the coverage about the fact that David Lammy actually fed this stuff in quite some time ago through the MOJ into this sort of thought process. He actually had these views, bizarrely. It is utterly, it's just disgraceful, actually. Utterly disgraceful.
When you said Lammy fed it into the MOJ, I can't think. David Lammy spent £500,000 on food and booze since he became the Foreign Secretary. Do you know that?
Well, he should probably look at a diet, actually. He's getting a bit chunky if he's eating all this nonsense.
No, you're not allowed to say that, because I've got a question for you, Matt Vickers. What have we got? Crime, policing, illegal migration, St John's Ambulance. Have you got breasts?
I've got, no, not from memory.
No, have you ever breastfed or have you ever been pregnant?
Not recently.
I'd love to know the Tory view of the St John's Ambulance have decided to erase women. Official CPR guidance says when you're trying to save some person's life, don't call them a woman, they're a person with breasts, or it could be offensive. Personally, if I was about to take my last breath, I wouldn't care whether you thought I was a bird or a bloke. I can't think of anything more ridiculous, man.
I think you're right. I think at that moment when you need these people to support you and save your life, you'd probably be slightly indifferent about what they did or didn't call you, but you will always find some person willing to take it out against a charity or an organisation because they did something really naughty and said something really naughty, like assuming the gender of someone because of the way they look. It just seems we get carried away with these things. I mean, the sad thing actually is you end up with two people on really different ends of the argument. You end up with people whose kids have decided they want to transition, they want to change, they want to be different. They can get on with it. You know, I think we should support people and they should be able to live their lives and do exactly what they want to do. And then on the other end, you've got this sort of bonkers sort of campaigners who just want to make hay and arguments out of something or nothing. And trapped in the middle actually is those vulnerable people who might have decided to change something. They aren't warriors who are waving a flag. They just want to live the way they want to live, and they can get on with it. For me, I think we should support them, we should back them.
Shock horror today
undermining the rights of other people who want to have safe spaces, etc., etc.
Shock horror today. The Tories announcing a policy that says that they'll deport all foreign criminals, nationals with criminal convictions. This on the back, Matt Vickers, of figures out this week that said that foreigners convicted in this country of 1/4 of sex crimes. Jesus, man, we've got to do something about this. Why are we not deporting these people? Mass deportation straight away.
It is utterly horrendous when you see some of the things that are going on out there, when you see the people responsible, people who come into this country illegally and then think they have the right to go around committing some of these heinous crimes. Actually, that's what that policy was all about today. We've had lots of big policy announcements this week, actually, Jeremy. You might have missed them. You might not have been paying enough attention.
I mean, concentrating on what horses are going to win at Cheltenham, to be perfectly honest. You can't expect me to do everything.
Rupert Lowe's latest takes on Twitter, but back here, we've actually been having arguments about real policy. We put forward a policy platform that says we will disapply the Human Rights Act for immigration cases. No more chicken nugget gate. No more, we heard about this rapist who all of a sudden overnight decided he was bisexual. These cases cannot be allowed. They make a mockery of this country. It just cannot be allowed to go on. We said we will disapply the human rights. We're going to have an amendment. We're putting it down in here. There will be a vote. We will have the chance to vote on it. Have people, put their name to what they think on that. We'll disapply the Human Rights Act from immigration. But then, moreover, we said that we will deport foreign criminals, whatever they might do. If you come to this country, you have the benefits of benefiting from this beautiful country. You should obey the law. If you come here and you abuse it, you break the law, commit crimes, then you are going back. And if your country refuses to take you, then we're going to cut their visas off. We will negotiate with these countries based on the fact that if you're not willing to take your criminals back, you're not sending anyone over on a visa. That's just a firm but fair way to do what actually will appear to be common sense to people right across this country.
Just to use that last phrase before we let you go, common sense. Some of what you've just said to me is total common sense. Do we wish, and I'm being honest, royal we, do you wish that your last government, had been a bit more vocal about certainly say what you're talking about today? Deporting foreign criminals will be massively popular. Saying to people who come here and take advantage of our system, you're not going to trash this country. You're going to go home. If you're not prepared to put something in, you're not taking anything out. Do you think the last Tory government could have been stronger on that? Genuine question, Matt.
I think so. I'd caveat slightly. So I think we should have been. I think Kemi said that. Previous governments have let us down. There are far too many immigrants coming to this. Immigration is just way too high. This country cannot cope with what's going on. So we've got a platform there. We've got a choice that we're putting forward to the British people at the next election. We're going to vote on these amendments in there to try to make these changes. This is the way forward. This is what we're going to do to protect our borders. But actually, it's more desperate now than ever before. We see more of these nutty court cases and people with the most ridiculous of excuses being allowed to stay in this country after they've committed crimes. Before the election, we saw the number of arrivals going down. We saw the number of people staying in hotels going down. Since the election, the number of arrivals...
Listen, I know that. I just wonder whether you didn't do more of that in the last 14 years. Can I make a point? As patently, your political career going upwards and upwards, and I should be just left here. I'm thinking the Liberal Democrat tie is not such a good idea, boy. I'm not liking that today.
I'll think about it. Do you know what? It's the second time I've had a comment on my tie today. It's got blue dots on it. Is that not like a...
It's appalling. Thank you for coming on. You're a legend. Matt Vickers, shadow crime policing and illegal migration minister in the shadow cabinet for the Tory party. Good to have him on. Good to have next. Well, the man, the only reason we've got a job, really. Mike Graham's next on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, welcome back, 25 to 6. Talk Drive welcomes, literally 12 and a half hours before he comes on air again, the legend that is Michael Graham. How are you?
I'm very well. Is it that time already?
It's weird.
Goodness me. 12. It's actually
By the way,
it's 11 and a half hours, isn't it?
Bumper stickers.
Bumper stickers, yeah. We've sold out again. A second batch has come in and gone.
I haven't had mine in the post.
Have you not?
No.
Well, we're probably framing it or something for you so that you can put it up in the house.
Just tell everybody the bumper. This is amazing. It's gone nuts.
Yeah, it's gone mad. It's the home of common sense. You get a picture of me. You can get also stay calm and listen to Talk with also a picture of me.
How many people do you think are going to drive at the car in front with your face?
Well, people have
bumper?
said that to me. You know, how many of these cars are going to be vandalised and keyed by the lefties who hate me? But no, apparently people since the beginning of the offer, which started about a month ago. There's been something like 7,000 or 8,000 requests now for them, and so we're trying as hard as we can, and we apologise to anybody who hasn't got their sticker yet. But we've sent out another 1,000 today, so keep your eyes open. If you spot one, we might send you a free one as well, which will send them all mad here because they're already getting upset that we're costing loads of money. You have to print these things out. Oh God, I've got to pay for them myself if we have to.
Yeah, whatever. We've got 10 minutes to talk about. Should we steer clear of reform? I just said what you said because I was listening to Breakfast.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people feeling very let down by the fact that this ball has been dropped, a ball that people I think were starting to believe in.
Nobody knows why it's happening. It's like why are they kicking themselves in the proverbial?
Nigel's getting a kicking.
He is getting a kicking. A lot of people to me this morning, I don't know if you've had the same, were saying, we think he has to go, which I find extraordinary because even last week when it broke, that's not what they were saying. They were saying, well, look, people don't get on with each other. Rupert Lowe, famous man, but not as famous as Nigel. Reform wouldn't be where they are without Nigel. He has to stay and run it. Now they're saying he doesn't have to stay and run it. They're saying maybe it's better if he leaves.
People are saying to me he's going to go to America and work for Trump and whatever. I would simply say this. I don't think there'd be a reform without Nigel, but maybe he's one of those people. I don't know.
I'll tell you what he needs to do. You know what he needs to do?
What?
He needs to come on my show tomorrow and answer the questions that people are putting to me about why he's doing it.
Listen, we've all tried. They have decided, and they're friends of ours, they've decided that they don't want to speak, which is very interesting because for me, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But whilst they say nothing, there's going to be more and more silence.
And also, they can't continue with this kind of wokery. You know, they've told everyone that wants to listen to them since their inception. You know, we're not like the others. We don't, you know, start police inquiries. We don't like report people to HR. You know, we're men.
They've done exactly the same.
And they've done exactly what they've been critical about. So I don't think they're holed below the waterline now. I don't think they can be in any way, shape or form true to themselves because of what's just happened.
I made a point earlier. I'd love to take on this quickly. Is this Nigel Farage looking at the big goal, which is to be Prime Minister, getting nearer to a degree of power and thinking, I've got to scale back certain things. There's parts of the establishment, much as I don't like it, I'm going to have to go by. And do you think Rupert Lowe just strayed true to the values of what Reform was talking about, and as a result of that, that's the clash? Or is it an ego thing?
I watched Rupert Lowe being interviewed last night on Dan Wootton's show, and he didn't come across to me as anything other than a genuine, hard-working, decent guy. Right? There was no suggestion of him being, you know, short-tempered. His staff have written a letter today in support of him, saying he's the greatest boss we've ever had.
I know.
He's, you know, it doesn't. None of it makes any sense. And if Nigel Farage wants everyone to think that he's some kind of out-of-control maniac who's suffering from dementia, you know, that's not really what we're seeing, I'm afraid.
Right, I don't want you to take the next thing, but we can say anything to each other.
We can.
Have you got breasts?
Not really.
No.
Not really. I mean, probably I could.
A bit mooby?
A bit mooby, yeah. I think there's no doubt about that.
The St John's Ambulance have erased
I once
women.
went out with an Italian woman who had no breasts at all.
Did you?
Yeah. But I was quite young. I was only 19.
Men can have breasts.
No, but she was a woman, though.
Was she, though?
No,
or was she, in fact, a bloke with no breasts?
No, she was a woman, definitely. And but she was just very flat-chested. Some women don't really have them. Simple.
Really?
Yeah. She was from Padua.
Look, get so worried, Ryan.
What's he worried about?
Let's get into the story. No, we're talking about breasts. If you don't like it, people get embarrassed about breasts.
Padua.
Her name was Padua?
No, her name was Daniela.
Right, anyway. You put me off. St John's Ambulance have erased women after issuing official CPR guidance that you can't say woman whilst you're having your life saved.
Right.
It has to be a person with breasts. Can you imagine about to take your last gasp and say, don't call me a woman?
Right. I know.
I mean, what is it, man?
It's ridiculous because, again, they're using words which don't make any sense. You know, call somebody a woman, you know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But if you call somebody a person with breasts, it's already longer. It's already not accurate because a woman might not necessarily have breasts. What about a woman who's had a mastectomy? What about a woman who perhaps is less well endowed than another woman? You know, it's not accurate, is it?
Mate, to
me...
It
doesn't make any sense.
But it's a bit like... that's
just
why
call them a woman.
Well, it's like this. That's why this station is based, isn't it, on common sense? It's like this sentencing council have gone, I don't care what crime you've committed, but I'll tell you what, if you're a different colour, a different religion, or you want to change your sexuality, I think judges should be softer with you. Why?
No, I know.
What does that say?
It shouldn't be the case.
So if I commit a heinous crime, I'll just change my religion and get off, will I?
I mean, somebody said to me the other day, the Old Bailey, right, has got the famous statue, the Scales of Justice. The Scales of Justice wears a blindfold, and there's a reason for that, because justice is blind. You're not supposed to be able to tell the difference between one person and another. If you commit crime, you commit a murder, you get sentenced for the murder. You don't get sentenced less because you happen to be brown-skinned or, you know, with one leg. What's the difference? You know, you get sentenced for murder. Surely.
And that actually, on a serious note, I know we're messing on, is exactly, I think, where we're coming to in this country, because we seem to be making excuses for people in this attempt to what? Tick the right bloody boxes?
I know. Yeah, because historically maybe people have been treated badly and sentenced for a longer period. I've yet to see any evidence that anybody who's a trans person or from an ethnic minority or from a different religion has been sentenced to more time in jail because of any of those reasons. I've not seen that anywhere.
I completely agree. And you can imagine, can't you, the sentencing council, if Trump was here, they'd be sacked within about 5 minutes.
And in fact, they're now fighting back. They've told Shabana Mahmood that, you know, they're not interested in her criticism of them.
We're supporting her, aren't we, for the first time, a Labour Justice Secretary.
Except for the fact that she's, I think, being slightly disingenuous because I think she knew that this was coming and she hoped that nobody would notice. But when it was suddenly picked up by Robert Jenrick, who got a complaint from an actual magistrate who said this is not right, she suddenly went, oh, I didn't know they were doing that. Well, she did know because one of her people was in the meeting when they decided to do it. And they've said today that she didn't object before. Why is she objecting now?
Probably timing. Let's talk about Jenrick quickly. A lot of disquiet about Kemi Badenoch, and every time I put it to anybody, they go, "Oh well, Kemi Badenoch's spending her time working out what our plan should be."
Yeah.
I think they should be more vocal. I think the reform thing is an open goal.
I quoted you this morning because I was listening to your show and watching it actually yesterday. Very good it was
Whilst you were cooking.
Whilst I was cooking, yeah, I was making stuffed peppers again yesterday.
See what I mean?
Except with venison this time, and you know, the thing is, you're absolutely right to say that she's not doing the job that she should be doing. She's not taking advantage of the weakness of reform right now, which she should be doing. And I think she's very disappointing.
I'll tell you why I think she should be allowed. And I know the Tories will say, well, let them fight amongst themselves. The British public are still so hacked off with what the Tories done that there needs to be a different narrative. And if I was her, I'd be saying, right, here's a chance for me to say, yeah, listen, you might not want to hear this because we messed up, but this is the reality, okay? And we're going to learn from this, blah blah blah. Nothing. What I don't understand the whole approach to it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Very quickly. It's like the farming thing. Yeah. I completely get we need to build houses. Only if we closed our borders, we wouldn't need to build so many houses. Let's make that.
That would be good.
Point.
We're apparently going to build more houses out of wood, which I don't think is a good idea.
Why?
Because apparently it's easier to do, it's cheaper to do.
Did he blow that one down?
There's a reason. There's a reason why houses are built out of bricks in this country. It's because the weather makes the wood wilt.
I agree, and I've always slagged off MPs who say we need more houses, but not in my constituency. Yeah. But there surely must be this new government's planning an infrastructure bill that says we can just grab a farmer's land and pay him a lot less than he should have got and build houses. There must be brown belts. You know more about this stuff than me. There must be places. Just use petrol stations. What about businesses that have closed down?
Absolutely.
Why is the only place to build a new house to house migrants in the middle of farming land that produces food that feeds us?
And also, when you see, and I do see this every weekend down in Sussex, everywhere you go, they're building a new, housing estate, and they're not small. They're hundreds of houses, and nobody's put any thought into what happens once you build those houses. Where do people go? Where do the cars go? Where do the school children go? You know, is there a doctor nearby? Is there a hospital that's going to be put under more pressure? You know, and the road system is not in any way upgraded. So they're creating a real recipe for disaster, I think.
For you, it's a land grab. For me, a two-tier justice madness, a CPR system about could you not get to a point in this country? And then people say to me, you come on every day and you say the same thing, but you could get to a point where you'd start to worry for this country for what, just sanity, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and also just outcomes. You know, people worry about their children. I don't worry about them just because that's where I am. But a lot of people do worry for their futures and their children's futures. They're going to be like, what possible future have they got?
I look at Iris and she's 1. I look at Oliver who's 5, right? And I'm like you. They'll make it's like the net zero thing. People say to me, "Don't you care?" And I go, "No, they'll sort it out. Honestly, they will sort it out." But we're at a stage in our history where something has to happen, and I think that's why there's such dissatisfaction, certainly amongst our listeners and viewers, that reform seems to have grounded itself on its own rocks, really.
And it looked like it was going to be a great big success, and it was going to be different, and it was going to be something that you could hang your hat on, as my father used to say. And now it just looks like they don't know what they're doing either.
So I love the tie, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much.
Very smart. So back in the morning, 6 o'clock.
Back in the morning,
what can we
6
expect?
o'clock.
Bumper stickers.
More
and
bumper stickers, but unfortunately you can't write in for some more yet because we have to wait till we get another batch made.
I think you need to put your foot down and say print some or I'm off.
We've ordered more, so the factory's probably printing them overnight, I suspect.
Where? Indonesia?
I don't know.
No.
I've
Do you
no
care?
Idea. I don't care.
No. Just get them
as
printed.
long as it's making some damage to the climate, I'm happy.
Show's amazing, Mike, and we love you. Thank you so much indeed. You haven't had a bet at Cheltenham today?
You know, I'm not a horse racing betting man really, but if I'm ever there, I would bet.
No, don't be ridiculous. If you were there with me, you would be completely drunk.
Well,
so
I
you
would
wouldn't
be.
have a bet.
No, but the last time I went racing, I went to Ascot with a good friend of mine. And in fact, the mother of the work experience girl who's next door.
I thought you were going to say the mother of one of my children.
No, she's not one of those. No. And we made an absolute fortune.
Did you?
On the tote, and I literally left with bags of I was falling out of my trousers.
I love him.
It was absolutely brilliant.
He's a legend.
Couple of £1,000.
24 hours a day. Julia said the other day, sent a picture saying that you look like the Russian ambassador to England.
Apparently the Russian ambassador to the UK looks just like me, yeah. I think it's a slightly bad comparison, but you can see there is similarity.
Check it out, and he's back tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, the best breakfast show in the land. Mike Graham, this is Talk Drive.
Yeah, the idea is that, you know, if you're going to be giving these people a lesser sentence on the grounds that they're from Congo, despite the fact that they've committed more violent attacks than anybody else in Britain, that's entirely wrong-headed, isn't it?
Well, this really doesn't seem to me to be a situation which is filled with complexity. If you are a foreign national and you come to the United Kingdom and you commit a crime, then you should be deported.
A lesser sentence on the ground.
Clifford, after the attack in which he killed those 3 women, he then shot himself with a crossbow and is now permanently paralysed. I know. I cried tears for him too. Of course I did. But the judge said the prospect of putting a man in a wheelchair, in restraints, and the disruption it would cause to proceedings meant that he chose not to do that. As far as I'm concerned, drag him out of his wheelchair, drag him up the stairs, into the court, into the box for the defendant, and if necessary, he's shouting and screaming, gag him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 9 minutes to 6, the first day of the Cheltenham Festival. Push the fire sport button, sorry.
Sport Summary on Talk.
Sam Ellard, a very good afternoon. Welcome to a...
Jeremy, how are you? How are you?
I'm not good at all today.
Oh, have you had a bad day at the races?
No, it wasn't that. It started last night when Newcastle were given a goal after a blatant push on a West Ham defender, Max Kilman, and shouldn't have allowed the goal, and we lost 1-0, West Ham, to the tune.
Do you know what? I'm going to be honest with you, JK. You know me, I like my football. I probably watch way too many football matches a week. Last night was a struggle. I really thought it was a game that lacked any real quality. I probably thought Newcastle offered maybe a little bit more of a threat going forward. Newcastle winning 1-0 and a big win for Newcastle. They jumped all the way to 6th. It's incredible, isn't it? I mentioned it before on the show, how congested it is. It's a real shame that we're in early March and the title race is done. Liverpool 15 clear of Arsenal. The relegation battle, I think, is done. Wolves have got a 6-point cushion on Ipswich and Leicester and with a better goal difference. But the race of European places is so tight. I mean, 7 points separates 4th place all the way down to 10th. Newcastle with that win, jump up to 6th in the table. Not great, but a big win for them. And of course now, all eyes are going to target that big game Sunday, Jets, Wembley, Liverpool, Newcastle, Carabao Cup final.
I think it'll be very interesting. I think Newcastle might sneak it, but I could be wrong. Champions League tonight, massive game for your team. Liverpool PSG, 8 o'clock. Bayer Leverkusen against Bayern Munich. Harry Kane, 3-0 up. Harry Kane never won silverware. Must hope this is the season, surely, man.
Yeah, we're eating good tonight. I mean, the Liverpool-PSG game last week in the first leg was a remarkable game where, I mean, I'm a Liverpool fan, and I mean, goodness me, it was absolute daylight robbery. To sum the game up in a couple of seconds, PSG hammered England. Hammering isn't even doing it justice. It was like they battered Liverpool from start to finish. Alisson had one of those games where he had an absolute worldie, a literal smash and grab at the end when Harvey Elliott scored late on. The fact that we go into the game tonight with a 1-0 lead in aggregate, it's we're very, very lucky. We're at home. Our home record's good. The Anfield factor, European nights. One thing PSG showed, a new look PSG team, is they've got good players. They've certainly got a good attack. If they can be clinical tonight and take their chances, it's going to be a cracking game. Anfield under the lights. Liverpool 1 up. Bayern v Bayer Leverkusen. Bayern Munich 3-0 up. Lots of people here, I'm speaking to lots of European football experts, and they thought Leverkusen were going to knock out Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich 3-0 up. They should get through away from home this evening. Elsewhere, Inter Milan 5-0. Inter Milan 2-0 up. Barcelona Benfica. Barcelona 1-0 up. But it's all about Anfield. It's going to be a...
Give me a prediction, Liverpool fan. Come on, Liverpool PSG. Is it on TalkSport?
Yes, it is indeed.
Who's
absolutely.
commentating on it? They got you, or they got the proper one, Sam Matterface?
Oh no! They got the proper ones for a Champions League night. Let me try and find out. Bear with me. Let me find out.
I mean, you didn't come with that information.
What? Who's on commentary duty?
Yeah, come on. I mean, you'd think you'd know that. I mean, you're here to promote TalkSport's coverage of Liverpool PSG tonight from 8 o'clock, and Sam Ellard proving why he isn't one of the main producers.
Well, I should tell you, at 7 o'clock tonight is kick-off with Adrian Durham, Mickey Gray and Danny Mills, Scott Minto. What we're doing tonight on TalkSport is we're going to take you around the ground, because there's also a big night of football in the Championship and obviously the Champions League. So no live commentary on TalkSport. We'll do even better than that. We're going to take you around the grounds.
Nice. So let's just get the result from you then. Let's get, because you won last night, Liverpool PSG.
I think Liverpool win this evening. I think it's going to be the Anfield factor, solid defensively. We won't be as poor as we were last week against them. I might go 2-1 Liverpool tonight, JK.
Right, I'm going to say something. Watch Ryan fall off his chair. I've been nothing but impressed by Liverpool. I believe tonight will be the first thing in 5 days where you lose or exit 2 cups. I believe that PSG will win 2-1 tonight on aggregate, 2-0 at Anfield, or 2-1 on the night and will win on penalties or an extra time. And I believe that fatigued, depressed and morally debunked on Sunday, the mighty Toon, who I've forgiven for beating West Ham, will do you in the Carabao Cup. And when we talk again next Monday, you will be a shell of the man you are tonight. Liverpool are about to unravel Sam Ellard.
I got to say, JK, do you know why I respect it? Because you've put your you-know-what on the table and gone, deal with that. Fair enough. Given the fact that Liverpool are 15 clear at the top of the Premier League, finished top of the Champions League group, you've put a big prediction out there. I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but I respect it. And can producer Ryan write this down, please, on a piece of paper and make sure Monday morning when we talk, JK, we address this, please.
We can address this. We can address this game tomorrow. PSG Liverpool. All the information you need. Let's talk about day one from the Cheltenham Festival. I'll be there Thursday, Friday. Really looking forward to it. Today was all about Constitution Hill. If you are a racing fan, this is one of the greatest This horse, one of the greatest hurdlers ever, was a 1-4 on shot to absolutely do the business at Cheltenham today. The most dramatic champion, 250 grand to the winner. He fell at the third or fourth last, I think, or even the second last. And the second favourite fell at the last fence. And an unfancied 25-1 outsider, Golden Ace, romps up the hill, wins the champion hurdle. And I'm just sitting here licking my wounds and thinking, what am I going to pay for it? You know. And in walk 2 of the bosses from Talk, who have all been on Golden Ace at 25-1 and didn't tell anybody about it, man.
Yeah, that's the way this goes. There's always 1 or 2 people that have these ridiculous bets, and then they'll tell you tomorrow who to back, and they won't come in. But you've summed it up there pretty well, JK. It's Golden Ace, the shock 25-1 winner of the champion hurdle at Cheltenham. As you mentioned, previous winners, Constitution Hill and State Man fell. It was drama, it was chaos, but I think that's why Cheltenham can be the best and also worst sporting occasion, isn't it, JK? I was watching it on TV. It was magic, it was shock.
Have you been? Have you been?
Yeah, I was very lucky. I've been the last 3 years with the breakfast show. I've done the whole week there the last 3 years. An incredible event. I'm very jealous you get to go this year, JK.
The roar when the racing starts every day is to behold. It's a beautiful, beautiful track. Fantastic. So day 2, we'll lick our wounds, come back for more champion chase tomorrow. Loads of information about that on TalkSport as well. And of course, Alan Brazil, if he's not drunk in a ditch somewhere, will be presenting the TalkSport Breakfast Show live from the Cheltenham Festival. Day 2, Wednesday, tomorrow on TalkSport. Finally, before we go, I saw a really I couldn't work out whether it was good or toe curling interview with that loathsome Gary Neville interviewing Sir Jim Radcliffe, who bought Manchester United, asking him all sorts of things. And information today that Man United plan to build a £2 billion iconic 100,000-seater capacity stadium. How quickly? When's it happening? Is this reality or words?
No, I think this is a genuine reality. They've announced plans today officially to build the biggest stadium in the UK once construction is complete. The club's existing home is likely to be demolished. Old Trafford has been United's home since 1910. The club would continue to play at Old Trafford until the new stadium was ready. Listen, I think it's one of those. I think Man United fans need to embrace the change. Old Trafford right now, Jeremy, I promise you, it's not fit for purpose.
No, it's not.
Fit for purpose.
It's dreadful.
To be for one of the biggest football clubs in the world. The Glazers have neglected it. You've got to move with the times. I actually think there's something positive for once about this new stadium. It's going to take time, but as you mentioned there, the key numbers, £2 billion, 100,000-seater stadium, very close to Old Trafford. Old Trafford is rotting. Old Trafford is falling down. It needs to change, Jeremy, and it's going to happen in the near future.
More of that, and of course, more of Cheltenham tomorrow on TalkSport. But the big match tonight, they'll go around the grounds on TalkSport from 8. But Liverpool PSG and the Liverpool fan, the Sam Ellard, the man who will not be listening to anything. Liverpool are going to win the Premier League. They're going to win the Champions League. They're going to win the Carabao Cup. Tonight, they exit the Champions League at the hands of the amazing PSG.
You know what, Jeremy? I'm going to WhatsApp you for the first time tonight at 10 o'clock.
Why? Your mother does it every night at 10 o'clock, so why would you not do it as well? It's not a problem. Good luck to PSG Liverpool. Are you back tomorrow to go? Is he back here tomorrow or is he busy? He's back tomorrow, and we're back after the news at 6. If you want to be on, 0344 499 1000. That is the telephone number. Text to 87222. We will do the news at 6 next on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About my friends, just gone 6 o'clock. Tuesday evening, we're live across the UK with Talk. Before we get back to it, you'll have seen that horrendous story. A friend of all racing, John Hunt's wife and two daughters murdered by that crossbow killer, that vile Kyle Clifford. The irony and the sadness that he was, you know, sentenced, and it all came out today on the first day of Cheltenham. John Hunt's an amazing man, and what happened to him was, and his family, was despicable. Can I just say something that I feel really strongly about, and this might cause certain people to criticise me? Scumbags like Kyle Clifford, I mean, I don't believe he should be allowed to live, but that's just my opinion. But I'll tell you what, we have a country that seemingly bends backwards. What are we hearing from the Sentencing Council? Oh, if you're a different colour or a different race, or you worry about your sexuality, we think we should be softer. I'll tell you, pieces of crap like Kyle Clifford should be dragged from their cells up the stairs by their hair, if needs be, on their hands and knees, and be made to face the families of the people whose lives they utterly destroyed. I think it is an absolutely disgusting rule that allows people who have committed crimes like that to stay in their cell. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see his disgusting face right now. Too scared to face the people whose lives he blighted. I hope he rots for all eternity, and I hope he is never able to see the light of day. 0344 499 1000. Loads of you wanting to get on this, Al. Let's go to London. I mean, we're in London. We could just... Well, I don't know where we go. David, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening. How are you?
I'm still depressed about West Ham, but we'll forget that. We'll cross over that one quickly. Worst game I've seen for ages.
Are you a Hammers fan?
I'm afraid I am, of many years. I'm glad I don't go over there at the moment because it was dreadful, Jeremy, dreadful.
Yeah, I know. I have to believe that it'll be better under Graham Potter when he's got a few players in. I have to
when he
believe
gets
that.
rid of about 6 of them.
Yeah. Right, me old son, what do you want to talk about?
I mean, I've just sent an email to Rupert Lowe. I've just basically said in the email, I wished he could have kept his reservations about Nigel in-house. I mean, look, if you talk to somebody like Andrew Pearce, I know Andrew Pearce quite well. Basically, he's going to blow it. He's going to blow it all over the media, isn't he? Why did he talk? Why did he have an interview with Andrew Pearce and then sort of slag off Nigel? He's going to blow it all over the place, isn't he?
Listen, yes, of course, that's what journalism is. But I will say this: I can't, and I literally can't in my head work out whether there's a sort of connection here between Farage and other people falling out. I don't know whether Rupert Lowe has been stirring it. I've put forward on this show today a belief that sometimes in life you have to show that you are electable to the, I'm going to say, the establishment. There are certain people in Reform who think that Nigel Farage has softened a bit and that Rupert Lowe, not in a position of power, has continued to talk the talk. The biggest thing for me, David, and I've said it all afternoon, I've said it since yesterday as well, is I genuinely, like millions of others, still feel or felt that Reform offered a genuinely real alternative to the misery and the up and down policies of the Labour Party and Tories. I'm 60 years of age. We have them, we have them, we have them, we have them. And I believe what I think is sad, and I think a lot of people share this, is that a great opportunity might well destroy itself over egos, arguments and disappointments. And I think that's a shame for the country as a whole.
I think you're absolutely right. And the last bit of my email said, I just hope you've not done irreparable damage to the party and the hard-working members who worked their socks off to get you guys elected.
Couldn't agree more. A fellow West Ham fan who's miserable anyway. Thank you. Let's go to Kent. Jack, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening. How are you?
Oh, hello, Jeremy. Not bad, thank you. These forms this form that you have to fill in the hospital.
Oh.
It is in.
Are you in the hospital now, man? You sound like you are. What? No? What?
No, I've just got a bit of a cough. A smoker's cough. I mean, what would you do? Would you have 2 forms, one for men and one for women?
Oh God, here we're going to go again. I really worry about a country, right, that is so wrapped up in either not offending people or actually in its attempts to not offend people and seemingly do this madness to all these people, upsets almost all of the country. A woman is a woman and a man is a man. And if you're going to change, that's fine. But what I can't have... No, hear me out. I can't have that piece of crap Kyle Clifford allowed to cower in his cell today, having murdered 3 people in cold blood and ruined John Hunt's family forever, and John Hunt and his adorable daughter, friends of ours. Listen, I can't have that. He's allowed to cower, and yet we've got people worrying about whether you call it a person, a woman, or a person with breasts. We get all our priorities wrong, Jack, it seems to me nowadays.
Talking about the question as to whether you're pregnant or not.
What?
Now, you've got one form. You don't know whether it's a man or a woman filling out that form. So how do you find out if a female is pregnant or not if you've only got one form? I had
to fill out a form the other day for my son, and there were 47 ethnicities he could have been. Honestly, mate, in the end, I'm going to say what I think, and I'm going to do it the way I do. I think the world's gone completely mad. Jack in Kent, thank you. Good afternoon to Margaret. She says, Morning Glory with Mike Graham is the best breakfast show on the radio or the television by a merry mile. Forget the rest. Does that mean the rest of the shows? Margaret! She's in Birmingham. Jez, how to save Reform. Nigel should stand down. Ty should return as leader and bang Rupert and Nigel's heads together and tell them that the party comes first. Then make a statement to the party faithful which direction they are going back in. Jamie Hooper, a very good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in to Talk Drive. He says, Tory MPs need to be careful saying they'll deport foreign criminals. Keir Starmer will be labelling them far right soon. Carl in Essex says, I listened to Matt Vickers. Sounds good. Why the hell didn't they do any of that when they were in power? Jeff is in Huntley. Why did I say Huntley? It's in Aberdeenshire. I really think Nigel Farage is ruining the party now. I can't imagine Rupert Lowe surviving this long in politics if he was as bad as they are saying he is. Steve Chandler reacting to that story about farmers who, under Angie's new plans, could lose land they own at a ridiculously cheap price. Can't the... Have you heard this right? Why don't the farmers go to the ECHR about the persecution they're getting from the government? Also, think of the poor Albanian kid who will have to eat foreign chicken nuggets when there's no British farms left. Steve Chandler, you're a man after my own heart. Breaking news, by the way. And I tell you, Starmer will take credit for this. The United States has just announced that it will immediately restart intelligence sharing with Ukraine after a positive day of peace talks. We'll have more at 6:30. But Donald Trump, of course, got really strong with Ukraine, that falling out in the Oval Office with Volodymyr Zelensky a couple of days ago. Having said I'm stopping military aid, he then said I'm stopping the sharing of intelligence, which would have a dramatic effect. Many people on this side of the pond think this is just all posturing and games to get the Ukrainians to bend a bit in his quest to end this war. But that is breaking news, and we will speak this hour to Kira Ruddick, Ukrainian MP and a voice for what Zelensky is trying to do. We'll do that around 6:30, 10 past 6 though. Back to it, a man who, a bit like Sir John Redwood, who I'm getting a job in Panto. This is another one that I've saved from the scrap heap of a political career, who's become just hysterical overnight. I think they're all going to be stand-up comedians. Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons and Tory MP, formerly for the Ribble Valley. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Jeremy?
Oh, my God, you're in another place now. You've got a job in a library. What's going on?
This is the home of Colonel Bob Stewart, my wonderful, wonderful friend who was an MP up until the last election. And so I'm at his house.
Excellent. For dinner? I don't even ask. Now, I just want to see your face when we're doing this, Nige. I'd like your take on the reform debacle. I had Matt Vickers on earlier, who could barely contain a grin, but I'm going to try this from a different angle, because you and John have really garnered support on this station as two ex-Tory MPs who come on and don't make excuses and are quite straight with what you think. And I think that's what the audience wants. I have heard repeated words from Tory HQ that Kemi Badenoch is taking her time and thinking about the mistakes that were made and working out a strategy, and today we heard something about deporting foreign criminals. But to me, this is a golden opportunity to grasp the narrative, the ear of the British public, and be quite loud and quite brash and say what she thinks. Nothing. Reform is really struggling. If you were still a Tory, would you not be advocating that now is the time to stand up and say, look, we haven't had your ear for a year, we messed up, probably not for 2 or 3 years. This is where we think they've gone wrong, and this is what we do differently.
I totally agree with you. It shouldn't take months to work out what we did wrong. I could work out what we did wrong during the general election campaign, and calling it in July when we could have gone in October and November when Nigel Farage would have been in America covering the American elections was the first mistake. Announcing it in the rain was the second mistake. And daily there were mistakes that were made. So I don't think it's rocket science to work out where we went wrong. We know where we went wrong. And what we are now lacking is policies where people can go, absolutely. At least I can now say the Tory party are back in town. We've got this one opportunity where there's internecine warfare amongst the 5 members of Parliament that represent reform. We've got this one opportunity where we can now say we are the established alternative with policies that we went wayward for the past few years. We're back in town. Kemi hasn't got the luxury of months, I can tell you now. We've got the May elections looming. We've got that by-election when Mike Amesbury resigns. I assume that will be on the same day as the local elections. And then, of course, there may be other by-elections. And then next year, you've got the Welsh Assembly, the Scottish Parliament, and they are clearly in the sights of reform. So I don't actually agree totally with Rupert Lowe, by the way, when he gives no credit to Nigel Farage for being the... And I actually see messianic sometimes actually as a positive thing, not a negative thing. And without Nigel Farage leading them into that last election, I think they would have got half the votes they got.
No reform without Nigel, but of course the questions with their silence, their choice, with their silence has come further questions. And is it about ego? Is Rupert Lowe after the job? Did it start when Musk said Farage needs to go and Rupert Lowe is the man? We've had the accusations. There's a police investigation being launched today. And yet, here's the interesting thing, Nigel. Actually, 7 members of his staff in Parliament, this statement today saying, actually, he's one of the nicest people that we've ever worked for. And we had to work for Nigel Evans, who was a nightmare. No, I made that bit up. But the truth of the matter is, they seem to be shooting themselves in the foot. And that, from my point of view, in terms of many people phoning this show across the day, from Mike in the morning, they're all been saying the same thing. We feel let down. We genuinely felt after the last election that this was an alternative that we wanted to consider, something we could believe in after the debacle of the Tory demise. We don't like Labour, we don't trust the Socialists, and I think a lot of people feel let down. For me, here's the million-dollar question. I wonder whether you'll answer it. I think the Tories, I don't think they've been vocal enough. I'm sorry, I don't see her lasting till Christmas. I think you made a massive mistake not voting for Robert Jenrick by an absolute merry mile. And to me, he's the one who found out on a couple of these things, pieces of policy. To me, he's probably the nearest to a real deal that the Tory party have. How would you feel about that?
Well, speaking honestly, because you've asked me to, Robert has been on a bit of a journey. Don't forget, he was, when I first knew him, he seemed to be on the left of the party, and then all of a sudden he appears to be on the right of the party, whereas I think Kemi has consistently been covering the same territory as she always has been. I thought she did splendidly well when she put up for the leadership the first time round, and I think she deserves a chance. Now, the party has actually elected her, and so let's give her a chance. Let's see how she performs. Initially, don't forget, she was coming up with no policies, Jeremy, and then all of a sudden we heard her views on immigration, and anybody who is an illegal immigrant in this country who commits a crime is now going to be sent straight back home. Well, I think we should be even stronger than that, and anybody who enters the country illegally, that should be a crime in itself.
Absolutely,
I mean,
here.
If you're coming in as an asylum seeker...
Why didn't you do that for 14 years then? Serious, straight question,
and that's what they should have been. That's what the party should be doing, and I understand that that's what they do in other countries around the world. We need to show strength and resilience, and unless we do, we're going to be seen as an also-ran when the general election comes next time round. Anybody who thinks that we're at 121 seats, so we've hit the ground and there's only one way to go. No, there's not. You find in lots of places that where there's a ground, there's also a basement. And in some cases, there's something below the basement. And that's where we could end up unless we start to offer the country a real alternative.
Is she the person for the job, Nige? Is she the person for the job?
Yes, she is. But I think that she needs to seek some better advice from other people, maybe a wider circulation of people that she's got around her, and that she has not got that luxury of just laying back and going, oh, where did we go wrong? And I wonder where we ought to be going now. I think it was bleeding obvious where we went wrong, and it's bleeding obvious where we ought to be going.
Couldn't agree more. I'd love your take. The shackles are off, Nigel Evans. He's out of that little chef kitchen. There are one or two stories today, mate, that genuinely make my skin crawl, and I never would find myself supporting a Labour cabinet minister. But Shabana Mahmood, take a bow. This sentencing council rubbish is an embarrassment to this country. For those of you who don't know this, the sentencing council, which was set up under Blair, created a sort of edit a couple of weeks ago when it said to judges, when you're passing sentence on criminals who have committed crime, by the way, if they come from an ethnic minority or a sexual minority or a religious minority, you need to be softer when you sentence them. She quite rightly went, that's ludicrous, that's two-tier justice. They snapped back and said it's nothing to do with her. If this was America, Trump would have sacked these idiots straight away. Nigel, can you explain to the British public listening to this programme how the hell this country has people like that, mate? That's an embarrassment, man. That's saying that that's like that Isla Bryson in Scotland who raped 2 women, put a wig on and a skirt, and imagined that he could get away with rape by going to a female prison. That's just a con, isn't it?
I take my hat off to Shabana Mahmood. She is speaking not on behalf of the country, but on behalf of justice as well. Jeremy, I remember when justice was blind. It was blind justice, right? It didn't look to see who you were or what you were. This is the crime, did you do it?
Yeah.
And if you're found guilty, the sentence is meted out. And to think that there's going to be two-tier sentencing, it's bad enough having two-tier policing, but two-tier sentencing as well is a slap in the face of justice in this country. And I think the minister is absolutely right to tell them to look again, and I understand that's what she's going to do. And I think that if the sentencing body carries on in the same vein that they are, ignoring common sense and ignoring the minister, I think that the government needs to legislate.
And actually, I think if they did legislate, it would be cross-party agreement. I think it'd be through in about half an hour. Can I take your take on this latest Labour farmland grab? I think the way this government's treated what I call really sort of central parts of our being, pensioners, veterans, farmers. The tractor tax is bad enough. This latest plan from our Ange is, under her planning and infrastructure bill, is to say to farmers, if I want to build houses on your land, I'm going to just give you the price that I think and you can sod off. I am all, by the way, for building houses. I have two things to say, though. I've no time for the MPs to go, we need more houses, but not in my constituency. But surely, Nigel Evans, the real way to solve the problem, apart to find brown lands or areas, is to close the borders so that we don't have to build houses for people who shouldn't be here in the first place. Yes or no?
That's absolutely right. And I believe that since 2010 to 2024, we had something like 5 million people coming into the United Kingdom. It's no wonder that we need to build more houses. If we got control of our own borders, which I thought was what Brexit was all about, then we wouldn't need to build these houses. But I like what one of your callers said earlier on. Maybe the farmers ought to go to the European Convention of Human Rights and say that they are being downtrodden by the government.
I don't understand, actually. I mean, not that I understand much about the Labour Party, but if you take on pensioners, veterans and farmers who provide the food we all eat, for goodness sake, the idiots in number 10, where do they imagine? I mean, you were the Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. That's not sensible. That's picking fights you don't necessarily have to have. Is that out of... Is it blind power because you've got a 180-seat majority? Is it a lack of political nous? What is it? Because it doesn't make sense.
Well, they've had a lack of political nous ever since they took control of Downing Street. Don't forget the first group of people they picked on were the pensioners when they took away their winter fuel allowance, and it just went on from there and there and there, and then the waspy women. And so the farmers are just one group of people amongst many that have been basically beaten up by a government that said they look after them. So I think they got it wrong. Listen, I wasn't just Deputy Speaker. I represented a part of Lancashire, which we had 800 farms. There. Farming is vitally important, not just for providing food, but for the environment, for tourism within the area. People don't want to come to the Ribble Valley to look at housing estates. They come to look at the open countryside, and we've got to protect that. And you can't have people like Angela Rayner riding roughshod over our beautiful open countryside and saying, right, that's where we're going to build 1,000 houses. And we don't care what local democracy says, and we don't care about the injustice of saying to farmers, and by the way, I know that this land would be worth 10 million if you sold it for planning, which you wouldn't have got before we became the government, but we're only going to give you 2 million for it. I mean, no, it's completely illogical. And as I said, I love the idea that our farmers should go to the European Convention on Human Rights and say, we are literally being strung up to dry by our own government. We need protection.
So good to have you on. Just one final thing. St John's Ambulance released an edit saying that when you're giving CPR to a woman, you can't say, lady, I'm giving you CPR. It's a person with breasts. Are you pregnant at all? Do you want to talk about that? Are you breastfeeding at this moment in time?
I tell you what, that is... Listen, if you are giving... You're talking about mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody who is lying on the floor, about to be within seconds of dying, would care what they were called. They just want the person who is above them to get on with the mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. It's bonkers.
I
mean,
love you,
political
Nigel
correctness-
Evans. I love you. I'm
political
gonna
correctness
create
crossing lines.
I'm gonna do a stand-up tour with you and Sir John Redwood, free of the shackles of office. You're brilliant. Have a great evening. Appreciate you being on. Ex-Deputy Speaker of the Commons, former Conservative MP for the Ribble Valley, the excellent Nigel Evans. Great to have him on. So what have we got? 35 minutes if you want to be on in those minutes. 0344 499 1000. The number as ever. You can text 87222. Start your message with the word talk. 6:25 now.
I think my number one thing would be every time you guys get a photograph fingerprint, look up, give us, what's your name? And again, this guy's got two different names. They all have two different names. How useful, how convenient. It defies belief to me that we'll just wait. We're just going to wait for the next attack.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do. Just going to wait for the next attack. And then when we have the attack, we're going to light some candles and we're going to pray. We're going to sing "Don't Look Back in Anger," talk about community cohesion, and then we all move on to the next one. So, what's your name? Clifford, after the attack in which he killed those three women, he then shot himself with a crossbow and is now permanently paralysed. I know. I cried tears for him too. Of course I did. But the judge said the prospect of putting a man in a wheelchair, in restraints, and the disruption it would cause to proceedings meant that he chose not to do that. As far as I'm concerned, drag him out of his wheelchair, drag him up the stairs, into the court, into the box for the defendant, and if necessary, shouting and screaming, gag him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Friends, welcome back. JK on Drive till 7. Kev is here from 7. No. And just seeing if you're quick on the button. Don't worry, it's fine. Kev is here from 7.
Oh, which one was he?
Very good. Petri Elskin's here from 10 o'clock tonight. 0344 499 1000. This from Natasha says, Jez, listening to your Welsh farmer earlier talking about being needed to feed the country and how Labour don't seem to understand. People need to realise that the Labour Party does understand, but in my mind simply doesn't care about the people of this country. They hate our history of empire. They want to destroy the UK as we've known it for 1,000 years and reconstruct it to their socialist image. That is why they will pretend to stop the illegal migrants from coming, but they won't, and they aren't bothered about the security threat. Phil, good afternoon. Reform need to sort this mess out bloody quickly. Don't take any prisoners. This is going to cause them a lot of harm. Hello to Greg on the Wirral. That's the posh part of Liverpool, isn't it? Come on, be on it. Joe, be honest, the Wirral. They get out the bath to have a wee on the Wirral. Talking about all this gender nonsense and the situation where people can identify to whatever they want to be. My friend, says Greg, said to me, my daughter is identifying as a cat and wants to be treated like one. I'm sorry, if that was my daughter, I'd make her eat out of a bowl on the floor and make her go to the toilet in a litter tray, then throw her in the garden at night. She'd soon change her bloody mind. And let me tell you, for all the people who are offended, he's absolutely spot on, because I would do exactly the same. Sorry, but that's the truth. Love it. George is in Blackpool. Hello, Georgie boy. I'm a rotund 63-year-old man with a shaved head and a goatee beard. If I had reason to have an x-ray and the radiographer asked me if I was pregnant, I would feign offence and threaten to write to the hospital administrator to complain. I wonder how they would deal with that attitude. This country is being run from the asylum and not by the right staff either. It's bonkers. Stuart Santry. Lovely name. Jez, I feel completely let down by reform. I've been a Tory voter all my life until last year's general election, when I not only voted reform, but for the first time ever I joined a political party. But I believe, sadly today, check this, right, I cancelled my membership and feel we will now be stuck with Labour for years to come. Steve says, another Nigel who knows what he's talking about. Excellent. We love Nigel Evans. Yeah, Nigel Evans to John Redwood, Tories for 35 years, quite vocal against what Sunak and Johnson were doing, showing themselves to have that common sense that this country seems to be lacking. 0344 499 1000. Common sense in the United Kingdom when we allow illegal migrants in 24 hours a day. Henry Bolton, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeremy.
I'm going to start slightly differently. Oh, you've got your little Union Jack out.
I have, yeah.
I'd like.
There's a bigger one on order.
I bet there is. I'd like a very brief take. You know all about reform. What the hell's going on, Henry? And let me just supplant that by saying this to you. Everybody that we've spoken to across this day, the majority are all saying the same thing. We believed in this. We felt we wanted to after the debacle of the last few years. We feel really, really let down. Are you surprised? Are you shocked? What's your take on this, HB?
Disappointed, I suppose. Certainly not surprised. I followed on 9 months after Nigel stepped down from the leadership of UKIP, and I took on the leadership of UKIP. So, if you like, I was very much in that circle, and at one point I regarded Nigel as a friend. But with time, it was quite clear that that UKIP, subsequently the Brexit Party and Reform, have been a platform, a fundraising and support platform from which one man can project his politics. And I think Nigel needs to take a long holiday. That would be my advice. Have a think about whether he's doing this for him or whether he's really doing it for the members of his party and the country. And indeed, there is a long history, myself included, of people around Nigel, his sort of acolytes, are not necessarily acting on instructions or direction from Nigel, but if Nigel sort of suggests that somebody's exercised poor judgment or is a bit of a problem, then those people around him who are sort of part of the Nigel Farage cult, in his sort of inner team, if you like, will consistently, persistently brief against the individual. And I'm not just talking about myself, but I suffered that from a little bit, but a lot of other people suffered greatly, and it's been a long-standing thing. And it's very disappointing, because I think a leader of a political party has to have vision, charisma, communication skills. Nigel's got a lot of that, but he's also going to have loyalty towards the people who are providing loyalty to him. And I think Nigel sort of, I'm sorry to say it, but Nigel does lack in that department. I'm conscious that some people will say, well, maybe, Henry, it's sour grapes on your part. Nigel had nothing to do with my downfall. That was decisions I made along the way. So that's certainly not the issue. However, people did try. I mean, there was this fiction about my military career. It was it was put about by people close to Nigel. And one of them subsequently said, well, Nigel questioned your judgment, and so what did you expect to happen? To which I said, well, you know that my military history. And by the time you managed to prove that it was all, it was all false, then some of the damage would have been done, wouldn't it? And he said, and it worked, didn't it, too? So, that's not necessarily Nigel, and I'm not saying it's directly Nigel, but the atmosphere around him, whether he's aware of it or not, and I'd like to think he's not, that happens. And
do you believe, just briefly, do you believe that the reform bubble bursts and doesn't recover, or do you believe this is a blip?
I think it will at least be a scar that it carries for a long time. I say that because whilst there are some very good, competent people in reform, reform is Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is reform. It would not exist if it wasn't for him. The other leadership team, if you like, Richard Tice, Zia Youssef, don't have the communication skills or the personality or the charisma that Nigel has, doesn't have the media pull that he has. If he disappeared from it, neither of those two could take his place. But then Nigel and Zia are the two directors of Reform 2025. So what happens there?
There's my question, and we've sort of, as a station, we've reached out to Reform, and it's really interesting to get your take, because I think that disappointment that many people are feeling will be channeled in one or another direction. What you're saying is that a man who, and I genuinely believe this, there would be no reform, I don't believe, and I don't believe there would have been the momentum, excuse the use of a left-wing organisation's word, but I don't believe there would have been any of that, with the greater respect to you, Ben Habib, Richard Tice, Peter Youssef, whoever, that he just has the name. But within the context of that, within the context of a man who is the very epitome of this movement, I guess it's like running your business and then having to have people in positions of power and delegate responsibility. But that's the essence, is it not, HB, of really great leadership, that you can push things out to other people, maintaining control to a degree. I don't know. I don't think the Rupert Lowe, if I'm being honest, and I did watch that Dan Wootton interview last night, it was excellent. I don't think that Rupert Lowe is somebody who comes across as bitter or twisted or out in this to score points. He's a rich, successful businessman. I think he's probably stuck to his beliefs. What I want to ask you is this: is it a case of Nigel trying to move a little bit towards the centre as he approaches the belief that maybe he could be the next Prime Minister, and dealing with the establishment, and that people like Lowe are like, hold on a minute, you're caving in here. You've had a go at Zelensky. You've talked about, we should be talking about Islam in a different way. Is Nigel doing the right thing to try and get Reform elected, knowing that perhaps people on the other sides of the party, the outer reaches, couldn't? Or is in fact the truth that Nigel doesn't like being questioned, doesn't like being criticised, and frankly, it's my way or the highway?
It's both. Unquestionably both. The my way or the highway, if somebody becomes a problem, an embarrassment, starts taking the limelight. I actually warned Ben Habib about this before he joined Reform. And I said, look, Ben, you're an outspoken man. You're going to be outspoken. It's going to go down well. You're going to become popular. If those two things happen, you're outspoken and you're popular, then watch your back. And that's exactly how it is when you're working with Nigel. He doesn't like it if somebody else is taking some of the limelight. He doesn't like delegating. I know he was very he questioned my judgment when I created, as leader of UKIP, a sort of front bench of spokesmen, for example. I wanted to delegate. I wanted to delegate policy development. I wanted to delegate the opportunity for other people, because it's not just about me, it's follow on and everything else, other people to become a little bit more familiar in the public sort of arena, to get used to that. But that judgment was questioned by Nigel to me. He said, look, it's just going to cause you nothing but trouble. You delegate, then people will run off. They'll take advantage. And yes, people do. And yes, I had that problem, and I've had that problem in every management and leadership position I've had. But it's crucial that you do that. And you also don't take credit for what other people have done. You allow them to take the credit for it. None of that really, in that sense, Reform is not a very comfortable place. I don't suspect it. It wasn't with UKIP. However, when you're part of a movement like that, and you have all the glitz and the glamour and the events and now the fireworks and so on, you feel as though you're part of something optimistic. And that is a big thing. And that's also something that a leader needs to make people feel, as though they're part of something. There's a unity, there's a direction. And Nigel's done that. But the rest of it, it's very thin. And I told him once, I mean, I did say to him, look, Nigel, you've got the platform, you've got the projection and so on. The media love you. I said, but you've got to do the detail. You have to do the detail. And if you don't want to do it, which he made clear he didn't, and he wasn't interested in that, get somebody else to do the detail. But it never went there, because somebody else then, if you can imagine Boris, he had Dominic Cummings, and everybody was all over Dominic Cummings for a while. What's going on, you know, when he was in Downing Street as chief of staff and so on. And Boris was comfortable with that. Nigel would not be. And I think, you know, as I say, my advice to Nigel would be go away, do some of your fishing, have a think about that, think about whether or not now is the time to sort of for reform to evolve into something else. With you at the head of it, with you as a sort of a figurehead or as a sort of actual leader of it, whatever. But the present way it's going to go. I think it's going to be a bubble that bursts.
Really interesting chat. Can you do me a favour and stay? Because after the break, I want to talk to you about immigration. Is that all right, HB?
Sure. Yeah.
Coming back in 3 on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Tomorrow, Mike's here from 6, Julia from 10, Ian from 1, and we're back with Drive tomorrow afternoon from 4 o'clock. 0344 499 1000, back with Henry Bolton. Really interesting chat with him ahead of the break about the whole reform scenario. If we can move to immigration, HB, briefly. Finally, the Tories stuck their head up at the parapet today. Kemi Badenoch's decided to speak. This week we heard that foreigners are convicted of nearly 25% of the sex crimes in the United Kingdom. We heard yet another appalling story about how a Jew-hating Palestinian who films himself with an AK-47 gets to stay here probably because of human rights law. And then we have this Tory thing today. They finally announced that the deportation of all foreign nationals with criminal convictions. About bloody time. Why does it take so long for these people to actually make a sensible suggestion, man?
That's a very good question, Jeremy. I don't know. a lot of them now are saying things that they could have been saying years ago, to be frank, and they didn't. Why don't they? I mean, I've speculated often that they don't have the courage, they don't have the knowledge. And I say courage, they're frightened of tackling the topic. But as more and more evidence comes out, I think they're gaining confidence. And there are more and more people, particularly on social media and shows like yours and elsewhere, flagging this up. And I think it's got to have, over time, an effect. And they realise that perhaps that they're better off politically responding to it. As for, what can be done, I mean, look, Albania still tops the league tables in terms of organised crime, criminality across the board. And yet 1 in 4 Albanians in this country have served a jail sentence. That's 1 in 4. Now, when 25% of a particular sort of cohort of people in the United Kingdom, or immigrant people coming in the United Kingdom, end up in jail. And of course, that's not just the people. That's not convictions. That's not criminal records. That's not cautions or anything like that. That is in jail. And so when that happens, surely it is time to say to yourself, if you are the Prime Minister or Home Secretary, isn't it time we stop these people coming in? We don't give them visas.
And Henry, that's my point, because we've done all sorts of stories on this show in the last year. Today we've done this ludicrous story about the ambulance service and are you a man or a woman? Have you got? I mean, all this crap. We seem to be fixated in this country, certainly under this government. But before that, let's be honest, the Tories as well, because I saw no movement in all of this ludicrous madness. We seem to be fixated on making excuses, two-tier sentencing. Oh, if you're a different creed or colour or religion or sex, you should be treated better. We seem to go with all of this, and yet politicians of all parties seem to miss what I would call open goals. I am absolutely of the mind. I mean, I'm 100% behind Shabana Mahmood about this sentencing thing. Donald Trump would sack that sentencing council overnight. If you're telling me that in this country you commit a heinous crime, and if you're a certain colour, a certain creed or a certain religion or sexuality, you can get away with it, that sends a really crap message to society as a whole and says to criminals you can break the law. If you're saying to foreigners you can come to this country, take advantage of everything to the detriment of the British people, and by the way, you know what? Commit your crimes, but we'll just let it happen. Why don't politicians do this? Why don't they go, I know, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to commit to what I believe in because I know it's what you people want. Why don't we get ourselves somebody like Trump who has the balls to stand up and say, I might be unpopular in certain parts of the establishment or the left-wing media, but I happen to know that millions of people in this country agree with me.
Look, we talked before the break about leadership. And leadership is about exactly that. It's standing up for your principles, standing up for what you believe, and actually consistently. So when we talked about leadership of reform, but when you and when I was leader of UKIP, when I campaigned, I didn't change after I became leader. I continued pursuing the same agenda that I promised to pursue. Labour did not before the election. What we've got here is people who are all over the place because they maybe don't have any ethics, don't have any principles. I don't know. It's just political pragmatism, what they say and do. But if you do not, at least with Trump, he says, I'm going to do this, and he damn well does it. Now, he is chief executive and head of state, and they have a different system, so it's much easier there. A British prime minister can't do it quite like that, or quite as quickly in most cases. However, if you are not a leader, part of the leadership thing is making decisive decisions.
And unpopular ones.
Direction.
And unpopular ones. And sticking to it, Margaret Thatcher. It's true.
Absolutely, 100%. You've got to take the rough with the smooth. And it's not about evading difficulty and trouble by getting rid of somebody or by appeasing a certain part of the society. You have to be consistent. You have to give. If you haven't got a vision, you can't apply direction.
Can I jump in, because I think that's a really good word, because vision, conviction, a plan. Yeah, I see politicians, Henry, who seemingly don't feel able to read the room. They're so obsessed with what a focus group or X will tell them to do. if I was a politician in this country and I actually believed that immigration needed stopping, and that's what the British people had elected me for, I would close the borders on day one. I wouldn't care who wrote what or who. My judgment would be by the British people. If they voted me out, then I wouldn't do it. I don't
Then you've got
understand.
a mandate to act.
Precisely.
Then you've got a mandate to act.
Precisely.
But the thing is, what we've got in the House of Commons, almost to a man and a woman, it's almost all of them, maybe literally no more than a handful, and I'm not talking about the 5 Reform MPs, by the way, 4 or whatever, by the way, but there are no more than 4 or 5 who are actually capable of leadership. The others, yes, they come from they represent society, but society doesn't represent leadership. You need people who stand out in the crowd, who aren't the same as everyone else. You need people with that vision, with that direction, with the courage and passion, and as you said, excellent word, conviction, to do whatever. And if it means that they make a difficult decision, but it's the right decision, and they can justify it, and their government falls and they're removed, and that's the end of their career, they have done the right thing.
I have to finish with you by saying this to you, that what my old man taught us when we were kids. It might be worth having a go, because if you have a go and you fail, at least when you go to bed at night, you can look in the mirror and say, I was good to my word. It didn't pan out, but I stood by what I believed in. Henry, one of the best chats we ever had. I really appreciate you being on. Henry Bolton, excellent man, international border control expert on Farage, on reform, immigration, or immigration, I can't even speak. Stop laughing at me, Amy. She takes the mickey. It's 10 to 7.
Clifford, after the attack in which he killed those 3 women, he then shot himself with a crossbow and is now permanently paralysed. I know. I cried tears for him too. Of course I did. But the judge said the prospect of putting a man in a wheelchair, in restraints, and the disruption it would cause to proceedings meant that he chose not to do that. As far as I'm concerned, drag him out of his wheelchair, drag him up the stairs, into the court, into the box for the defendant, and if necessary, he's shouting and screaming, gag him. I don't care. Is this kind of the most likely way we are going to see any peace being actually agreed?
Well, in one sense, this is a very proper first step, because the Americans' role is supposed to be to mediate between Ukraine and Russia to see if a ceasefire can be agreed. Now, they say what the purpose of today's meeting is to find out from the Ukrainians what is their bottom line, what are the points they are prepared to concede in the course.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6 minutes to 7. Kevin O'Sullivan here from 7 o'clock.
Which one was he?
You know who he is. The wonderful Pedri Hoskins from 10 to the phone lines before we finish. PJ, a new caller from Hull. PJ, you're on Talk Drive. Couple of minutes only. What you got?
Hi, Jeremy.
Hello, mate.
Very quickly, I'm an older pensioner. Unfortunately, I wanted to leave the country when I retired. I lost all my money, so I've got to stay here. Now, I don't understand why this country can't be sorted out really, really quickly. Bring back conscription, 18 to 28-year-olds. This will stop majority of immigrants coming to Britain because they're going to have to join the army. Lots of jobs created for the people. Well, everybody that wants to come, they just will not come because they've got to join the forces. How many ethnic youngsters would be willing to join up now if they had to join up?
I think the army, the argument against that, of course, would be that the army probably wouldn't want these people. But yes, there are many people who argue that conscription would be the answer. For me, just being honest with you, PJ, really appreciate your call. I think we need to look at ourselves as a country and go, we can't afford to wipe the backsides of other people when our own people are suffering. And I know a lot of people on the left will say to me, that's really unfair, Jess. You don't know what it's like to live on a war-torn beach in France in a tent. No, I don't. But here's what I will say. I sort of feel you need to look after your own. I don't have a problem with providing a haven for people. I like the Ukrainians who were escaping a war, but people are taking advantage of our country, PJ, and being allowed to, and that is to the detriment of other people. I really appreciate your call. Very quickly to finish, and then another new caller on Tyneside. Angela, literally a couple of minutes. Welcome to Talk Drive. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and I love your show, and it's the first time I've ever phoned in, so I'm a little bit nervous.
You're doing absolutely great, because you're now going to talk to me about breasts, aren't you?
Not exactly. I'm going to talk to you about the old man that went in and was trying to say to them that he wasn't pregnant, but they were insisting he should tell them, do you know? And what I think we should do is, and I'm 75, so when I go in hospital and they give me a list and they ask if I'm pregnant, I'm going to say, I don't know because I didn't take a test today. Maybe you could give us a pregnancy test, then you can decide.
Do you feel sorry for these hospital staff?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Of course it is. Do you feel sorry for the staff that are forced to... Listen, do you feel sorry for the staff who are being forced to ask these questions? Because it's not coming from them, is it?
I do, because I do talk to some of them.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when there's nobody around, they admit that they've got asked to answer the question. So the ones up above who are cowardly and can't come downstairs and ask you the question, that is questionable to me. I mean, you know, who on earth makes this ridiculous things up? I find it offensive. To be honest, I find it offensive.
I said earlier about the
people in this position.
I said earlier about the St John's ambulance. I don't mean to be rude. If I was on the floor, dying and struggling, I wouldn't give a toss who was giving me CPR. Whether they had breasts, whether they were labelled as a donkey, I don't care. I'd want my life saved. Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly, and I just find that they're taking the mick out of everybody, do you know, because they must know it's ridiculous, do you know, and you shouldn't be asked those questions. You should be, are you nearly dying, or can you breathe, or have you got pain? Not, do you know.
I agree. Angela, I have to leave it there. My regards to you and to Tyneside. Thank you for being on. Loads of calls again, 2.5 minutes to 7 o'clock. Here's the man with breasts. How are you?
Oh, thanks.
Have you heard this ridiculous St John's ambulance story?
What is this?
They've released... the campaigners have accused St John's ambulance of erasing women after they issued official CPR guidance saying when you're providing CPR, you need to refer to the patient as a person with breasts rather than a woman. Oh, a woman's dying in front of you and you've got your mouth on her mouth and you're going to go, I'm sorry I've called you a woman. Yeah. You're a person with breasts which should stick it into my chest, but I'm trying to save your life.
Yeah, so some woman, as she's dying, going,
Did you just call me a woman? How dare you? Honestly,
man.
world is going crazy.
Interesting
World is
chat
going
there
crazy.
with Henry Bolton off the cuff about Nigel Farage. They're in big trouble, you know, Reform.
Well, they are. I'll be talking to Tim Montgomery about that fairly soon, but it's causing far more ructions than I think they thought, because Rupert Lowe's very popular.
He's very popular, and he hasn't reacted in a childish way. He's been very stoic, and you know, at the end of the day, we'll have to wait and see. What else you got, Kidder?
Right, you know this Jew-hating Hamas fanatic Abu Wadi?
Yes.
Who broke into the country illegally, and because the Mail on Sunday exposed that fact, he was actually arrested 4 days later on Sunday night. Right? What's he been charged with? He's in custody. He's charged with attempting to